about the heads of each of these departments. They literally are siphoning off money from the financial system, sending it to another country, sending it elsewhere, where we don't know where they're sending it. And that's a fact, okay? And now they're using crypto to do it. And that's why I think crypto will be regulated for a while, because government officials are throwing all their money outside using crypto. And I realize why that happens, because there's a lot of money launderers that are trying to get money out of the Philippines. This is what's causing the problem. All the minimum wage earners.
Right.
But you have to get a referral from your congressman, your senator,
right,
or whoever, your governor, whichever, and that's how they do it. And the problem with that is normally whatever's given to the person, whoever's the middleman takes about 10%, 20%. I heard half.
right.
So that's where the problem of corruption lies.
So let me get this straight. I get 5,000. I get 5,000 from these governors.
Yes.
So that I can vote for them.
Well, no, they don't say that. No. You get it from the DSWD.
Uh-huh.
But the referral comes from your congressman, your representative, or your senator, or whoever.
But it's
But the DSW is the one who gives it. He just says, "Oh, you were referred by."
Right.
Okay, but the DSW is still the one who decides. That's what they say.
So I help the poor by giving 5,000, and obviously I get a good name for it, and I get votes for it, right? But and it inflates the economy and it hurts everybody else, right? It's kind of robbing from everyone else in a bit.
Exactly,
Right.
and that's where the problem is. You get that 5,000 today, but that doesn't last. That'll last you 1 week,
Right.
And then what happens the next month, the month
Right.
after? What about if your kids get sick? What about the education? What about getting a job?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
What about your shelter?
Right. Let's talk about politics, because I don't get much opportunity to talk about how it works, because not a lot of people know how it works.
Or not a lot of people are willing to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would love to ask you, I'm a foreigner and I look at it, I can see things not working so well. I can see the corruption. It's pretty blatantly obvious. How does it work?
So, first of all, you have to look at it from a societal perspective, like the society itself. Society, Filipinos generally accept corruption as something that they can't do anything about. And as a matter of fact, a lot of Filipinos are fairly corrupt. In what sense? When they get a traffic violation, they bribe the cop. So the fact that that's acceptable for them, that's why it's acceptable to see all the corrupt politicians.
And it's become a way of life.
Yeah, it is a way of life. And then I remember I got stopped by a policeman before. And he was asking me, he goes, sir, this is how much a ticket is. And, but, sir, maybe we can help each other out. I go, I'll pay the ticket. I go, and then I told him, I said, hey, you know what? I go, whatever, Officer John, I'm just curious, why are you doing this? I'll just pay the ticket. You shouldn't do this. I actually gave him kind of a lecture, but in a nice way. I was being nice about it. I was being understanding, but I was like, you shouldn't do this. I'll just take the ticket.
Right.
That's the right thing to do. And he goes, and he kind of gave me the smirk, and he goes, don't lecture me. Like he said in Tagalog, don't lecture me on corruption. What I'm getting is a few $100. You should see what our leaders get. Millions. And I was like, you have a point. you have a, and he goes, I'm just trying to make a living. I don't earn enough.
Right.
Yet our politicians are taking millions. Why don't you say something about that? And I was like, I should.
Right.
I was interesting. So it's grassroots.
That's
the problem
funny you
is
said
so
that,
grassroots.
Right. And then it's just like, and you were saying, well, everyone idolizes politicians.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, if you're a politician, this is the way to make it. This is the way to get rich, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because let's face it, all these laws, there's so many laws and rules here, right? It really just becomes a way to gatekeep everything.
Yeah.
And if you're a gatekeeper, somebody's got to pay the toll.
Yeah.
Right? So essentially, and in this country, and I learned this the hard way, I thought, I had this very cocky American attitude where I thought, well, hard work, being smart, being persistent is gonna win out. It doesn't really work that way here, right? You have to be on the right side sometimes. The feeling is that, you need to have the right connections to be able to do anything. especially if you want to do something different. If you want to do something innovative, you still need to have the right connections.
You sound so jaded, and I don't blame you.
Yeah.
But I want to maybe say that yes, that is a prevalent way of doing business.
Yeah.
But it's not the only way, and there are a lot that have succeeded.
Right.
Doing it the honest to goodness
Yeah.
work. And I know that because as an entrepreneur myself, I was able to do it, and I know a lot of fellow entrepreneurs that did it. I know their stories.
100%.
I've seen it.
100%.
But you're right that most of the richest people in the world, in the Philippines,
Yeah.
have done it through a way that was not completely legal.
Right.
And I would say that if you look at the people that live in Forbes Park, for example, if they're not old rich, meaning they didn't buy it a long time ago, the ones that bought it recently, I'd say 50% of that are criminals.
Yeah.
Either they're in politics. When I say criminals, they're in politics, or they're actually criminals.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
I'm not kidding.
50%.
I'm just guesstimating,
Right,
but
right.
I wouldn't be surprised because
Okay.
think about the people that are able to spend that kind of money for a house, like $1 billion. How much is a house in Forbes now? What is it? $1 billion? Is it 500 million?
One of the most expensive real estate in any metropolitan area.
Right, in Forbes, right?
Yeah.
So if you didn't buy it back in the 50s to 70s, and
Right.
unless you're Manny Pacquiao,
Right.
I'd say the people that bought
Right.
it, man, did not buy it
Right.
with legal means.
Yep. You're absolutely right. I do, and I think there is a lot of opportunities to succeed here. You have the resources. I mean, I don't think the Philippines is a poor country by any means.
I don't think so either.
I think the Philippines, it's just the disparity between the rich and poor is
Yeah.
so huge, right? And I think there's a lot of opportunities here. And I think you can easily find the support you need here because there's a lot of good labor, I think there's a lot of talent. I think, despite what some people might think, I do believe there's a lot of Filipino talent. And a lot of them are overseas, and so I think, but you need everything here, and you need the right connections to get through the right gates. You need the right approvals. One example I think about often is when Uber and Grab, when they were here,
Wow.
right? Uber and Grab, I think it was a lot better back then when we had Uber and Grab competing.
I agree.
Right? Everybody
100%.
liked it better because they were both competing for your service. It was a lot cheaper.
It was easier to book.
Right. It was easier to book, and you had different choices. You had a luxury vehicle, whatever,
Yep.
right? Somehow, Uber decides to exit the market. Grab
Yeah.
wins.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think the service has suffered.
I agree.
Right? And this is another form of monopoly that we see in every industry here. You'll see one or two players,
And that's it.
That's it. It's pretty much like that in every industry here.
I wanted to add that you're right about what happened. And you know what the interesting thing about that was? I don't know if you knew this. After Uber exited, about 6 months, a year later, there was a new player that was
Yeah.
coming. And the irony was the investors are all politicians.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it? What was the?
I forget the name of the app. I think it could be even running now. I think there was because now there are more players. I don't know if you know there are more.
Okay.
Have you tried the others?
No, I
There's
haven't. I didn't even know about
InDrive.
it.
There's InDrive. There's Utol.
Uh-huh.
The Utol is the newest one. Utol is a brother. So those two are the new ones that just came out. InDrive is different, where when you book when you book a ride, it'll give you all the available cars and your drivers, and you're the one who picks which one
Right.
that you want to get.
Right.
So that one just came out. I tried it. It's cheaper. So far, it's cheaper because I think they're new, so they're subsidizing it. And the latest one that came out was Utol.
Okay.
I haven't really tried that one, but now there are other players. And I think there's one or two more that are smaller ones that started. And I'm pretty sure one of them was invested by politicians.
I bet. Do you remember why Uber exited?
So apparently there were violations by Uber.
Right.
because the LTFRB or the LTO, whichever one of these government agencies said you have a violation and you're not complying, blah blah blah. But the irony was for me is that so it's two tiered. One is that Uber has also had run-ins with the law in other countries.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like thinking maybe they're doing something stupid in my mind. But at the same time, I know that our own government agencies are, really not dependable. They've come up with so many
Right.
idiotic laws
Right.
that are actually not favorable for motorists and commuters.
Right.
So many that I wouldn't put it beyond them to do this for their own selfish reasons or because of stupidity. Either one of the two. But it's either one. You're either incompetent
Right.
or you're complicit.
Right.
Because you have a self-interest.
Right.
That's it.
What about Grab? Didn't they face the same?
That's interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. So
Grab was started by a
Malaysian, Malaysian Singaporean, if I'm not mistaken.
He was a founder, went to Harvard.
Yeah. It was like his thesis, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think he probably knew the lay of the land much better in Southeast Asia.
I think he knew how to work with
The politicians.
more. Yeah,
And
because
that's my point. This is the key. You have to work with the politicians if you want to do something big
Yeah.
here.
You have to
Especially
be
if it's
willing to get your-
game-changing or disruptive, right?
maybe you're just saying you have to get your hands dirty.
I don't know, maybe. And that's one thing. I remember having many meetings with Land Registry Authority, LRA.
Okay.
Because at the time we've had meetings with them, they were digitizing their land titles, their titles. I mean, still to this day, it hasn't been done.
Yeah. They've
Right?
been trying.
Right? And you heard stories about like floods and fires and stuff that have burned up titles, and people are still disputing properties until this
Oh,
day.
yeah.
It's crazy to think
is.
that could happen, right? And that's the trust. You buy a property and you trust that the county and the government is
Yeah.
going to protect your right to that. But if they lose the title, or they don't have a copy, or they don't have it digitized, it's huge. It's a huge problem, right? And still to this day, it officially hasn't been done. But we were talking about how we could potentially help them or tap into this database for the purpose of verifying properties and verifying listings and potentially verifying valuations, stuff like that. But I remember not understanding how to work with governments, but I was dragged along for years, meetings, and it would just never get anywhere.
Oh my God.
And same thing with the banks too. I mean, I didn't understand this at the time. I didn't know how to finagle that, and I'm still learning this stuff as we go.
I feel bad for you that you wasted several years with those meetings that didn't go anywhere. What was the excuse?
I can't remember, but it would just always stop in its track. It was always like, yes, this is a great idea. We should do it. But nothing would ever come out of it. It was just, it was frustrating. And the same thing, I remember talking to banks about, they were trying to tap into, obviously they have an incentive to do a mortgage.
Yes.
So it was a way for them to promote
Of course.
their bank loans. And they also had foreclosure listings, and they would also have real estate listing sites
Right.
on the bank sites. I remember BPI did this too. And same thing, I just didn't understand how to kind of push it through all the way, because obviously you need to get to the higher ups, right? That's one challenge, so you need to always work your way up management. And you'll get the meeting to the next management, and to the next management, and to the next management. But what I didn't realize was, maybe how to kind of sort of grease that all the way up, right? Maybe that's what it took. Maybe we never had a shot. Or it could just be that they don't want transparency, or the powers to be doesn't want transparency. Who knows? I have no idea.
I'm wondering. So I think from what I'm hearing from you is like there's just really a lot of red tape in the Philippines, not just in government,
Right.
even in private
Right.
business.
Exactly.
My God, it is so difficult to get anything done.
Right.
I mean, you can just see it even on a retail level.
Right.
I've seen it like,
Right.
wow, there's so much redundancy.
Right.
that I'm just like, why?
Exactly.
It is such a waste of energy and time, right?
Right.
I think that's the core problem.
And there's so much improvements. You can see it.
Yeah.
It's obvious. There's so many improvements you can make.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities to offer better product and service.
You know, for land titles, what was interesting, what you mentioned was a lot of the people I know, the friends I have in the blockchain industry, that's the best way to solve it.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if you know how that works and why it solves it.
Oh, of course. Like, what do we call that? Yeah. It's tokenizing
Yes.
titles, right?
Yeah.
The only problem with that is this. Yes, blockchain, and I've realized, but you still need, at the end of the day, if you're going to put all your trust in a token, you still need the government.
Yes. Yes. And the
To
government.
buy into that. The government needs to be on the same
Yes.
system. Otherwise, it's just another piece of paper
Right.
that you're trusting that the government is going to hold up your title.
So my friends in the blockchain industry, the ones that have connections that are able to connect to the government, are actually working with the government to convince the government. And there's several parties that are doing it. But until today, like you said, nobody's been able to convince them to do it. And I don't think it's the lack of want, but I think it's really the lack of will. It's really that they just not that aware about how important it is to do it.
Right.
And that is the biggest problem in the Philippines. You can fake land titles, you can fake diplomas, you can fake a driver's license, you can fake your
Absolutely.
entire identity,
Right.
which has been shown in the last year,
Right.
where people fake their birth certificate. I mean,
course.
you could fake your mother, you could. Of
course.
So that's the problem. But if you actually are able to create a verifiable system, and I really believe that's where the blockchain comes in, is because it's immutable. Once it's on the blockchain, it is permanent. Nobody can change it, and it can never disappear.
But when that happens, if and when that happens, one, it will require the government to be following the same system. That means they cannot validate anything unless it's validated on the system, which is now democratized,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
That means they would need to give up their power over that.
Yes,
And-
to a certain extent. To a certain, not completely, because
Right.
when you say what will happen is there's still the verifying agent. There's still the one saying yes, this is really his property.
But if that's the case, if they're the one verifying it, there still leaves room for corruption.
To a certain extent, yes. But what it does is when you're verifying the property and you put it on an immutable ledger, you need several entities to all approve it. So it's not
Right.
just one. So all of them say yes, yes, yes. And once all of those boxes tick and you say, yes, it is confirmed, and they're all separate agencies that have nothing to do with each other, and it's confirmed, then it's locked in. And then forever, you know that land title is owned by John, sold to Chris, sold to this person, that person rented by this. And it becomes this chain that cannot be broken. And you know the history of each title from start to end.
If this happens, Philippines is not going to be the first country to make this work.
Yeah.
There will be other countries that makes this work
Yes.
first.
Before us, I think so.
Lesser corrupt countries
Yeah.
have a better chance of implementing this. And this issue isn't just in the Philippines. We have problems like this in the States.
Yeah.
We have problems with getting building approvals,
Oh, yeah.
permits, titling issues, whatnot. And if you think about the power of government, what is it? You think about military. They have the power to protect and to invade. They have the power to print currency.
Yep.
So you have to work under their economic rules.
Yep.
And they have the power to give you title over land and property, right?
Wow.
And so do you think the government really want to democratize their power?
So that's an interesting question because it really depends on who you put in power. If the people put the right people in power, I believe that yes, that can happen. And in some countries where the population is not so large and unmanageable or difficult to manage, that happens. I think that's why a lot of the Nordic countries are fairly successful in how they manage it because it's a smaller population. It's easier to manage and people are easier to manage. And And therefore, they get better leaders coming out of there who are actually more progressive, that can actually help the people. Versus larger populations like, wow, Philippines, Indonesia. I mean, look at the Southeast Asian countries where so much corruption happens. But although not to say that it doesn't happen in other large countries and first world countries. I mean, come on. Corruption is everywhere. It's just a matter of degrees. US has a lot of corruption. Even Canada has corruption. But it's in a lot lesser degree and a lot more discreet compared to in the Philippines.
Of course, yeah.
Here, it's just blatant. It's out there. Will they give up control? Might take a lot. Might not be in our lifetime.
I think, I made a video about this too. I think blockchain and tokenization is an opportunity for some governments, not all. Hear me out. I think governments need to compete, right? Governments need to compete for resources, for talent, for money, right? Think about Switzerland, right?
Oh, yeah.
Think about Switzerland, and they were the safe haven for the longest time.
Yep.
But who had the power to kind of prevent that? And, David Lee Chu spoke about this, and I learned something from him. There was a time when if you got rich in the Philippines, you were sending your money overseas to Switzerland, to the US, because you didn't trust your local government. This is happening in China, but China restricts it as much as they can, but money is still getting out of China because you don't trust the government to give you that title and to your assets, right? Here's where the opportunity comes for countries like El Salvador or Switzerland, who is thinking about moving their currency to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? You get to compete sort of the way Singapore and Hong Kong did. And now Dubai.
I was going to say Dubai. Yeah.
So we are going to compete for the wealth of this world. We're going to attract we're going to attract money by, giving you tax advantages.
Yeah.
Right? Giving you a safe haven to park your money.
Yeah.
Right? And so countries like El Salvador are saying, hey, crypto, we welcome you. Come and flood our country with liquidity. Because let's face it, that's what brings everything up.
You're right.
Right? We need the liquidity. Yeah. And in the Philippines, countries like this where foreigners like me can't buy properties. Yeah. I'm not even sure if I can buy stocks here. Maybe I can. But there's opportunity for the Philippines to bring in liquidity. But there's a lot of rules and regulations that prevent that. Why? Probably because it protects the oligarchies and whatnot. I don't know. But there could be an opportunity for the Philippines to capitalize on that using blockchain, using crypto, and attracting money. It's funny, right? I think if smaller countries, I think it could be a way to compete against the dollars. And in Switzerland, for example, U.S. prevented that because they wanted to, I feel like the U.S. kind of overstepped their power a bit because everybody uses the U.S. dollars. Every country uses the U.S. dollars, right? All the banking systems around the world depend on the U.S. dollars.
Yes.
All trade happens from country to country. Most trade happens from country to country through U.S. dollars. Because it's the reserve currency, the U.S. has the might to put sanctions on countries.
Yeah.
They have the might to, force everyone to report to the U.S., their U.S. citizens and their bank holders, or even report anything they want. Because all the AML rules and stuff are kind of like driven by the Americans, right? Because they don't, and in a way, it kind of really cut countries like Switzerland. You couldn't just hide your money in random countries anymore, especially if you're an American.
So well, I find that in America, you guys are overly regulated.
Right.
That's actually why I'm so glad I'm not an American. And when I heard Trump wanted to make us a 51st state, I'm like, hell no. Because, man, I feel bad for Americans with crypto because, wow, the way they were monitoring and forcing you to declare your crypto or face jail time is insane. Yeah. And honestly, with that anti-money laundering thing, it's BS.
Yeah.
They only get through the only... I'd say about less than 10%, maybe 5%. I think it's about 2% is actually convicted because of the anti-money laundering law when it comes to real money laundering, because the people that are really laundering money are outside of that system using cash.
Right.
But everyone that's trying to comply is the one that's getting screwed.
Right.
As a Filipino, if I try to take out $10,000 outside the Philippines, they're going to stop me.
Right.
Banks will stop me. Banks have. Like, I've done it before, but the bank says, "What are you doing with the money, sir? Why do you care? It's not your money.
Right.
I'm here. You know this is me. I'm taking my money. Why is it so difficult to do that?"
Yeah.
That's why I am so pro Bitcoin, because that's one way where I own my asset. Nobody tells me what to do. No bank is going to tell me, "Sir, you can't. You have to wait a few days. I'm going to send it to somebody. Oh, sir, it's going to take 3 days to say." Why does it take 3 days? I don't get it. I just want to send it across the country, across the world. So that was the biggest problem. With governments, I think that they are so insecure about their currency. That's why they're afraid for technology and the revolution of technology, especially financial.
Because it's one of their main powers.
It is,
right?
like you
I
said. And the U.S., although now the U.S., I understand that they are the reserve currency. And that the hard part about that is they're inflating their currency, which is the reserve currency, which is what happens with that. They're importing inflation.
Exactly. Why would any government give up their power to bail themselves out?
So it happened in Bretton Woods in when was it? The U.S. has been the reserve currency since somewhere around the World War II. Yeah. So when they agreed on it, they decided which currency are we going to use. So they decided on the U.S. as the currency that they're going to use.
It's only because the U.S. backed it up with gold.
With gold, yeah. And then when the U.S. took it off the gold standard, well, that's when all hell broke loose. That's why real estate and other assets that are scarce started to shoot up in value. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And honestly, I'm so glad with what's happening now with Bitcoin and with, like in the Philippines, the case of the pogos leaving and the real estate price going down, because, man, real estate should be affordable.
Yes.
Real estate should, I'm sorry, I have real estate. I actually have property I'm renting out that I have to rent. I have another one that I have to rent out next week that's opening up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, even though I'm going to be affected by it, I'm glad that this is happening, because I really, truly believe real estate should be for utility.
Yes.
Not speculation.
Yes.
And right now it's turning into a speculative instrument, especially among the mainland Chinese. And they're exporting that speculative power to all over the world, where prices are being driven up. In Canada, that's what happened in Toronto, why prices are so high. Because all the mainland Chinese are throwing their money there, because like you said, they don't want to leave it in China because the government's going to take it from them. So they're throwing it all the way outside of China where the government doesn't see it. But it's affecting everyone else. Now, regular Canadians can't even buy a home. In the Philippines, regular Filipinos can't buy a home. It shouldn't be like that.
It's like that everywhere, most places in the world, except Japan. That's why I'm there buying properties in Japan right now. And I'm studying the market. I'm understanding the fundamentals of how it all works. Japan's interesting, though. They've been printing money at 0% or negative interest rates, but they haven't seen crazy. Well, first they went through a huge deflationary cycle.
Yeah.
Right. And so they've been printing crazy amount of money to kind of bring back inflation. But then we realized how much of that money and that currency is actually going outside of Japan. And that's why they haven't seen hyperinflation. But as a result, and there are other reasons for this, Japanese real estate is actually affordable now.
Isn't it also a function of population?
It is a function of population. They're going through a declining population.
Massive decline.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. But there's more to it. There's a lot more to it. And the banking policies have a lot to do with it. And people don't realize this. I'll give you an example. In the US, I can buy an old property at, say, $100,000. Okay? I can put another $50,000 into fixing it up. And then now all of a sudden the home could be worth $200,000. I can go back to the bank and get financing for that home at the valuation of $200,000. And this keeps happening and happening and happening, and the values keep going up because it's supported by the liquidity of the banks.
Yeah.
Right? So liquidity now drives valuation.
Right.
Right? Now you have the same amount of liquidity in Japan. Japan has the most amount of liquidity. Cost of capital is the cheapest anywhere in the world.
Okay.
But yet you don't see that because in Japan they say, well, if you buy a house, it has to be depreciated. The building is never going to appreciate in value. The building, not the land.
Yeah.
Which is true. Buildings do depreciate.
Yeah, it does.
Right? So at the end of the depreciation cycle of the house, the building is actually worth zero. Right? You can fix it up and you can rent it for more, but you're not going to get a higher valuation from the banks. You can sell it for more if you like, if somebody's willing to pay for it. But that person who pays, the new person who buys it, they're not going to be able to get a bank loan on it, on the house.
Right.
Right? So in a way, banking policies have a lot to do with how liquidity and valuation is driven.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Right?
Ah.
It's actually quite smart. It's actually fundamentally sound. And in a way, it makes sense because the government wants you to tear down the house and rebuild it. One,
Yeah.
it boosts the economy. Two,
Yes.
new building standards after 30
Yes.
years. Safety standards, fire hazard, earthquake, volcanoes, whatnot, typhoons. It's implemented,
Yeah.
right? So you get a gentrification and new cycle of properties. And it works. It works.
Wow.
They don't have a shortage of housing. They have a robust rental market, especially around central cities like Tokyo.
Yeah.
And it's not unaffordable.
So do you think that like in the Philippines, for example, I don't think we have a problem with land. I think there's a lot of
No.
land. It's just everyone's trying to go into the center, which is
Right.
Metro Manila.
Right.
So, but my question is like, but if real estate was being sold for utility versus for investment, would the price be going up as much as it is now?
Absolutely not. It's all there's so many land speculators here, right?
There are.
So let's ask that question. Number one, I mean, there's a lot of layers to this. Why isn't there more development here in the Philippines? Because it's needed. This population
Yeah.
is growing like gangbusters. We need a sprawling population, not to be so concentrated in Manila,
Yeah.
and it's causing so many problems for everyday people.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine commuting 4 or 5 hours a day. That's
Yeah,
insane.
That's crazy.
And people are doing it.
Yeah, they are.
You know, and so if any country needs development, it's this.
Yeah.
You know, and so why isn't that? Well, let's talk about titling issue. Do you buy a property? Let's say you do all your due diligence. You buy some land out there that you want to develop in the near future. Okay. Let's say Ilocos Norte. Hell, Marcos is from there.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of opportunity to develop land there. And I'm sure a lot of the money is going to flow that way.
Right.
So go buy a property in Ilocos Norte. Let's say, assuming that you can get a land, no one's going to dispute it because it's still possible. You buy it from somebody, they transfer the title to you, and then later you have to go to court because one of their family members is disputing it. Let's say you get past that, right? Because the titling issue is a problem, first of all. You get past that. Then you got to deal with, okay, so next thing you know, you have your lot here. You know, the Marcos has their properties here. You know, whatever politicians. You know, one of the major developers decides to come in, right? It could work in your favor,
Yeah.
or it could work against you. Or they might be buying title. They could buy properties all around you, or they might claim your land somehow, somewhere. What are you gonna do? Are you going to sit through court and fight them out for years and years and years? Are you going to be able to afford to battle that out?
Yeah. And normally it's about six years a decade.
Right. There's so many risks.
Yeah.
Not to mention the infrastructure.
Yeah.
We haven't even gone into the infrastructure, the utilities, infrastructure. You know, like I've been wanting to buy land in Siargao for the past 10 years.
Oh my God. You've seen Siargao.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually tried to buy one.
Yeah.
So
Did you?
I didn't.
Okay.
So I had a friend who said, "Oh, I let me show you properties because they live in Siargao."
Uh-huh.
Showed me properties, And then they said, so this one, beachfront. I go, okay. So here's the thing. Not a lot of people have a title. They have the rights.
Tax declarations.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, so what am I getting? So they're just going to assign the rights to you.
Right.
There's no title.
Right.
So how do I know they own it? Well, because their grandfather owned it and now they own it. I'm like, okay. I was so already iffy about this. My other friend decided to give her the money. Guess what? So they created a contract saying, yeah, you own it, blah, 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 blah. And then it turns out that there was another sibling who said, no, I own it. And I have the title. But there was no title. I have the rights to it. According to this mayor, that mayor. This one said, da 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 da. Oh my God. So she never got the property. She ended up suing the broker because she was representing something that she couldn't get.
Right.
But the broker said, I can get it. And she was trying to meet with the landowner, could never meet with him. It was such a disaster. And I'm so glad I didn't end up doing it. So
Jesus.
without a title, don't do it.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
It's I mean, and then even the ones who are buying properties there, they're like, don't buy under a title, buy under a tax declaration because you don't have to pay the capital gains tax. You can avoid the initial capital gains tax because the minute you turn it into
Yes.
title, you have to pay the capital gains tax, and then you sell it, and then you got to pay the other person has to pay the capital gains tax. Somebody's paying for it. It's usually you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and then interesting you mentioned the capital gains tax. So this is something that I looked at the tax code because I'm very interested in it. And when I was in real estate, I was looking at that capital gains tax. So did you know that if you look at the tax code, it says 6%.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what.
6% of what you mean? It doesn't say of what.
It just says 6%. So when you go to the BIR and you pay your capital gains tax, what should it be? 6% of?
The assessed value, supposedly.
Supposed to be the gain.
Oh, here's the thing that I was trying to wrap my head around forever. When I was buying properties here, I'm like, so what's the capital gains tax? They were like 6%. I'm like, okay, the net gain, right?
Yes.
That's capital gains.
Yes.
But they say, no, it's the total amount.
Exactly. And they say that because they want you to, and if you give the money, it'll be 6% of the gain. Because nobody really checks except them. They are the law. And if you look at the tax code, it says, there's a clause that says, it is upon the discretion of the commissioner or the assessor, whatever, to decide how to interpret this.
The gain is easy. It's whatever you paid, whatever you sold for minus whatever you paid.
Exactly. It's defined, capital gains is defined as the profit that you made, if any.
Right.
And you pay 6% of that. But yet they say it's the sales. But if it's the sales or the sale price, then it shouldn't be a capital gains tax. It should be a VAT, value-added tax. Why call it a capital gains?
And they have a value-added tax.
Exactly. And there's also that. So why call it a capital gains tax when it's not a capital gains tax? So I debated with this with a commissioner, one of the whatever commissioners in whichever area. And then the end of the discussion was, well, it's what we say it is. And I was like, but I'm right. I said, I'm right. I was like, oh man.
Do you know why it's that? It's because this is the opportunity for corruption.
Exactly.
This is where they make their money.
Yes.
So I can interpret it either on the gross amount or the net amount, depending on how much I get from this.
And I have tried to talk to lawmakers about this. They didn't understand what I was trying to say.
They're trying to change this right now, right?
I hope. Are they?
Well, I guess, I think Marcos signed a law recently or they signed an act. I don't know where it's at the moment, but they're trying to change the way they assess tax values, right?
Yeah.
So I forgot what it's called, some long acronym, but it's basically there's a new form of assessment that's more towards global standards.
Yes.
And that's going to make it easier for them to collect taxes. But that also means that people are going to have to probably pay more property taxes every year.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, of course. If it's going to be based on that valuation.
Right. It's probably going to be based on a higher valuation because a lot of people buy properties and underreport the value,
Yes.
right? So
Always underreported.
right?
Yeah.
Because to avoid the capital gains.
Yeah, but the thing about that capital gains, I just want to add, is that what frustrates me is that if you look at the tax code, it's supposed to be fair and there should be no double taxation. But the way that capital gains is being applied right now, there's double taxation. Because if you buy it for $1 million, you paid 6% of that. And then when I buy it from you for $2 million, now you're paying 6% of the first million again and the second million.
Whoa, how does that work?
But think about that, because I'm paying 6% of 2 million.
Right.
But when you bought it originally,
Right.
you only paid $1 million. So you already
Right.
paid 6% of the million.
But when you sell it, the next buyer has to pay it, right?
Right. No, the seller is the one that pays it because you're the one.
Oh, the
who,
seller has to pay
Yeah.
it. Right? And the first million that you bought it for, the previous seller
Yes.
pays it.
But what I'm saying is the double taxation in a way where the property itself is being taxed again
Yeah.
for a gain that was already paid on
Right.
that first million.
Right.
Why are you paying that again? So that doesn't make sense. It goes against the entire principle of the tax code. And yet nobody's doing
Right,
anything.
right.
So I've just been like, can somebody please do something about this?
Right.
Nobody cares to do anything because it's not popular.
Right. Well, I mean, both sides have the incentive to cheat, right? If you're
Oh.
if you're the regular everyday people, why would you not cheat when you think, oh shit, I'm being double taxed for this? It's totally arbitrary, like whatever this guy thinks. Of course, you have the incentive to cheat the system any way you can and not pay the taxes. On the other hand, the policymakers are, they don't make it a fair and transparent system,
Yeah.
and obviously they benefit from that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But I like to believe that whoever wrote it was just ignorant.
You
They
think?
just didn't realize that, oh, shoot, yeah, we forgot to write down 6% of what? But the definition was there. I mean, on the same tax code, it says the definition of capital gains, but they just didn't write, when they wrote down 6%, they just didn't say 6% of the gains. But if you read the definition, it does say tax on the gain.
Do you really think it's ignorance?
I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I always believe that this is where I'm a little bit of an optimist. I've always believed that people do things. I would like to believe that they're actually being good.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just mistakes, unless proven otherwise. Unless you prove to me you're an actual evil person,
Yeah.
I would like to believe that you're just misguided or you just have your own set of rules that you believe in that could just be going against mine. I really believe that a lot of times, unless you prove me otherwise.
Imagine implementing a tax on everyone, but not defining what that tax is based on.
You know,
It's
John.
almost unbelievable.
I know,
Hey,
but
I've seen a lot of crazy things here, so who knows?
But I was going to say, John, you don't understand. I've seen a lot of laws written that I am boggled at how they even. The LTO is a perfect example of how. Sorry, I'm not trying to insult the LTO, but it's how idiotic some of their ideas are. And do you really believe they were doing it intentionally to make life harder for motorists? No. Some of these laws they're trying to implement, they really think it's going to work or it's going to help. And then they get a lot of backlash and then they go, okay, we'll pull back a bit on this. I've seen them do that. They,
Right.
retreated in a lot of their earlier pronouncements because they realized, oh God, that was really dumb. There aren't a lot of, I'm sorry, there are not, maybe the government doesn't attract a lot of smart people.
Right.
A lot of smart people ended up in private companies, not in government. When you're smart, you don't want to end up in government unless you're thinking of looking to make money already.
You tapped into something we could talk forever about.
Yeah.
You know what government does do it right? They actually do attract smart people, and I think the U.S. has this problem too. Obviously, you're seeing it. I mean, I don't think we have the smartest leaders in the U.S.
I don't think so.
You see what's happening with the forest fires, and everyone's blaming Gavin Newsom, and I don't understand how he's still in power after this long. But same thing. You know what country actually has the right approach? I think Singapore. Singapore pays their government officials quite high, actually one of the highest. And they wanted to do it that way. They said we want to attract the smartest and brightest people. And Singapore went from a third world country to a first world
world.
country in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But aren't government officials in Canada and the States and other first world countries paid well? They're paid well.
I think the official salary for the U.S. president is $80,000 or so a year.
No.
They might have. They
don't-
might have adjusted it for inflation, but I swear to
Yeah.
God, this was when we went to when we took history in the U.S. That's what their salary is. You imagine that? The U.S.
No
president of the
way.
United
That is
States?
crazy.
I believe it's adjusted to inflation now. Can anybody check? Can you check Google for me? How much salary does the
because
U.S.
I don't
president
think
make?
so. I don't. Yeah, 80. That's insane.
Yeah.
Because like in the Philippines,
Let's find out the exact amount.
Yeah.
Look up U.S. presidential salary.
ask AI. AI is so good at this. But in the Philippines, government officials are paid very well right now.
Are they?
Yeah. So,
official.
so what do you think is the median salary for an average employee? How about that? Manager.
Here, I would say less than 27,000 or so.
For manager?
Oh, manager, maybe more. Maybe about 40.
Yeah.
40,000
So
pesos a month.
I know this because I cover politics, so I research on this. So a counselor makes 110,000 pesos a month.
You can't even afford a decent condo.
No, but 110,000 pesos a month.
Actually,
is
you could afford a decent
100,
condo. For
yeah,
that.
110,000 pesos a month. That's actually pretty good. Because, like you said, median is about what? 40, 50,000 pesos?
Yeah, but in translation to US dollars, that's about less than $2,000 a month.
Yeah, but you're in the Philippines.
Yeah. cost
100,000
of
pesos
living,
salary
yeah.
is pretty good here in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is government officials are paid. That's just counselor. Mayor is about 200,000 pesos a month.
Okay. What about
Okay.
governors?
Governors are about, I think, 250 or 300,000.
300,000. Okay.
Respectable. You can already get a nice place. You rent it. You can have a decent living. Congressmen are about 250. I think 250, about there. Senators are about 300 or 400. 300, I think, or 400. Then executive, president, vice president is probably about 400 or 500,000, or I think a little bit more a month.
But in the private sector, like in the BPOs, when you hire managers, or even in tech companies when you're hiring tech
Yeah.
talent, it's more than some of these guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially in tech. In tech, I think Filipinos are starting to understand that they should charge the global rates.
Right.
Because at the start, Filipino developers were willing to, give me 50,000 pesos.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do all the coding.
Yeah.
And then they realized, wait a minute, how much is the global standard? Developers get paid $120,000 a year.
Right.
So that's $10,000 a month, and I'm getting paid $1,000. Screw you. Pay me at least 6,000,
Yeah.
and still cheaper for the company
Right.
to get the Filipino who's really good to do it than to pay somebody 10,000.
Well, like any arbitrage.
Oh, yeah, arbitrage, right? Exactly.
This is
You'll figure out where the money. Where is it the cheapest
Philippines
capital?
BPO is really a labor arbitrage.
Yes.
right? But like any arbitrage,
I mean,
that
like in
eventually
China is
closes.
also
Yeah.
labor arbitrage.
Right. That eventually closes at some point.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah, when people start to wise up and go, wait, you're exploiting me.
Look, I want to learn from you. I want to understand how politics work here in the Philippines. I understand that the Philippines has kind of replicated the U.S.
Yes.
system and the U.S. Constitution, but I look around here and things don't quite work the same, right? So we definitely have different types of problems here than we do in the States.
Yeah.
And so I want to understand a couple of things. Does this system work? Do you think the system works here?
You're talking about the government system if it's working. Well, it works, but not efficiently.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of problems that we face because government does not want to be efficient.
Okay.
And I think they don't want to be efficient for their own selfish purposes because a lot of the people in power are benefiting from the inefficiencies. And a lot of them are siphoning money off of the system for their own pockets. And
Right.
that's where the problem lies.
Right.
And we were talking about it earlier that the biggest problem we have is a lot of the politicians, and not just politicians, sorry, government officials. I'm talking about the heads of each of these departments. They literally are siphoning off money from the financial system and sending it to another country, sending it elsewhere where we don't know where they're sending it. And that's a fact, okay? And now they're using crypto to do it. And that's why I think crypto will be regulated for a while, because government officials are throwing all their money outside using crypto. I have gotten so many people, I remember especially in the last couple of years, where they would say to me, hey Chris, by any chance, do you have any Bitcoin to sell? Cash? I go, why does it have to be cash? Just go on the exchange and buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd prefer it off grid. Yeah, that's off grid. That's an exchange. Yeah, but still we'd prefer to pay cash. Wouldn't I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of middlemen around it that are forcing this. And I realize why that happens, because there's a lot of money launderers that are trying to get money out of the Philippines. This is what's causing the problem. We were talking about liquidity. It's being siphoned out of the Philippines,
right,
where it should be here.
Right.
So once it's siphoned off, and yet we're stuck with the problems here that we cannot fund because all the money is being kept by certain individuals and not being used. It's unused capital now. And that's where the biggest problem lies.
How does corruption, this money that you're talking about, what's the most common way people are siphoning this money off?
So the easiest way is through government projects.
Okay.
So that's why they love to spend. So actually, let's go back to the basic problem with government anywhere in the world. The basic problem with government is that they are they're made to spend. So they don't look at it as a business where, hey, I gotta balance my budget.
Right.
If I'm given a budget, I need to spend it. I cannot have savings, because if I have savings next year, they're going to lower my budget. So I have to increase it. That's why budgets keep increasing every year. Even if I don't have a project, I will make a project.
Right.
I will make a new building.
Right.
And the Filipino claps and goes, look at the infrastructure. Government's working.
Yeah.
Then they call me Bobo, because I'm like, why am I pissed? Because they're making a new building. But why are they making the new building? It's a way for them to increase their budget, and they take a cut out of that budget.
Of course.
And it's that cut out of the budget that creates these poorly made buildings, poorly made roads. And that's why, for example, prime example, DPWH gets a budget of, I think it's like, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, don't quote me on this, say it's 100 billion a year on flood control. 100 billion pesos a year on flood control. That's $2 billion. And yet we have areas that are still flooding up to today. You tell me, where does that 100 billion a year go? Every year, the DPWH says I'm spending 100 billion on flood control, and yet it still floods. How the hell does that still keep happening? So that's what I mean by where it's poorly implemented, because the very principle of how government works is wrong.
Right.
And that's what's causing the problem we have today.
How do we fix it? Is there any way to fix this?
So that's why I like El Salvador. That's why I like Argentina. I like Milei, because he said, cut all the government agencies out. I know it's drastic, and I know I have friends that are like, wow, Chris, I didn't know you were right wing. It's not about right or left wing. I really believe government is too big. I really believe in the idea of an invisible government. An invisible government is an effective government. If government is too visible, big government, that's where they become overreaching, and that's when they start to take too much control, and that's when it becomes inefficient. It's too big, and it's just not efficient anymore.
Do you see what's happening with this Doge project that they're doing in the States? And they're bringing on all these entrepreneurs and successful businessmen to come in and regulate government, and they're stating they're going to start cutting down government agencies and redundancies.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I love it.
Do you think
love
it'll work though?
I think you have to be careful with the cutting, because it could spiral your economy a certain direction where you don't want it to go. I think you have to be very careful and surgical about it, because if you just do a general sweep and just say, no, screw this, take this out, take everything out, wow, you could see an economy that could completely just collapse.
Right.
And that's why they have to be careful. Yes, I believe in what they're trying to do. And man, some of the things I see that Elon posts and says, look at this stupid thing we're spending on. I actually agree with him.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, for my friends that are, more Democrat than Republican, I am not a Republican, neither am I a Democrat. I'm not even a U.S. voter, so I don't care. I'm just seeing what I see, and I like what I see when it comes to government efficiency, and that trend will resonate with a lot of different countries that are still not doing it, and I think it'll follow in Asia and especially in the Philippines. And that's why I keep talking about that on my vlog. Inflation. I keep talking about that, and funny how when I first talked about it, a lot of the government trolls made fun of me, said to me, Chris, you don't know what you're talking about. Government debt is needed. It's important, and it functions because look at Japan. Look at the debt to GDP ratio in Japan. It's too high, and yet they're working. Look at the US, it's working. And Philippines, we're not even 63% GDP debt to GDP ratio. You're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, right. And look at the US now.
Yes.
So again, they don't know what they're talking about. Most people don't even understand inflation.
You know, governments always push for inflation. They need
2%.
Where they need a minimum level of inflation. I always question of whether it really helps people or hurts people. Because, I mean, if you're saving money, if you're working hard and saving money and trying to build wealth, do you really want inflation?
So
maybe.
Did you watch the video? Have you watched it? Not yet.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll give you why inflation is not really a good thing, and government made us believe it was a good thing. Jerome Powell was interviewed, and the reporter asked Jerome Powell directly, why 2%? Oh my God, he was fumbling all over. He's like 2% because it was a prescribed number that was I'm not really sure about and he was just going all over the place. Doing logical fallacies to be able to explain why 2% is good. He could not explain why 2% was good. And he's not the first one that couldn't explain it within the government. So the idea is, if money was real and money was valuable, the economy and everything else and the prices would go down. It wouldn't go up. And that's a good thing. Everything
Explain
would become,
that.
Okay, so what would happen is, wow, this is like talking about money. Let's see how far we can go, because this is a deep dive.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm not going to use the word Bitcoin. I'm just going to say good money.
Okay.
Okay. When you have money that's scarce, right? And it's not inflatable because of the fact that you can't print more of it, right? People are going to be more careful in how they spend it. Because they're more careful because it's valuable. They end up spending less on goods. Because they end up spending less. There's more supply than there's more product or service than there is money. So what happens is there's a direct correlation between product or service and the instrument of trade.
Right.
So the instrument of trade does not inflate. That does not become more. So therefore, whatever I'm spending on is the exact value of that product that I'm using. Right? So there's an exact correlation. Now, what happens is, because the money is valuable, you end up only spending on what you need rather than on what you want.
Right.
So what happens is now the prices start to drop because people don't need a new shirt every year, a new car every year.
Right.
Then companies don't need to generate more profit because they realize, wait a minute, I don't have to pay you as much now because the things are getting cheaper, and you can live and you could even buy a house because it's not being inflated. And suddenly all the prices start to drop and we start not working as much.
And maybe we can conserve the environment a bit more.
Exactly. The problem with the world is consumerism, because now we're driven by profit because there's more money we're trying to go after, that it's inflating the prices. Companies are working for profit, which is making us sick, because they're now taking all the resources to try to match the amount of money being printed. So now we're digging up more of our resources from all the...
Which is finite.
Which is finite, exactly. From all the hard metals to every agricultural product to creating more food, cows, chickens, everything.
You use a infinite... what do you call it? Mental construct on a finite resource, which is this earth.
Absolutely. I love that mental construct because it's just something that...
So, I'll tell you another way inflation is good for the government. So I can borrow as much money as I want to buy anything I want, look at the debt to GDP ratio, especially in the US and other countries, in Japan. I can continuously have this endless liquidity. At some point, I need to pay back that debt. So as time goes on, as there's more inflation, there's more tax revenues, there's more, that debt that I had that was insurmountable becomes smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Because the money is worth less.
Right.
Because money back then is worth less than money.
Right.
I mean, money back then is worth more than money now.
Right.
So it works in their favor. And again, it gives the government power. Again, I keep coming back to this. If you just boil it down to the root cause, the government has maybe more, but three main sources of power. I mean, it's the most fundamental. It's what makes government different than a business organization or whatever, right? It's the fact that one big part of it is that they control the monetary policies and the currencies.
So, do you know how to solve all three? Take the power of controlling the money out of the government, and they just become another beneficiary of the monetary system that is free from all government control. That's what it was with gold. Because gold was a finite, scarce asset that was, you had to either have it or you don't, and that's what you used to trade with. And once the government took control of it, and then suddenly said, screw that, and it's now us that you follow by decree. We are now the one going to decide what the value of the money is. That's when the problem started. Take it out of the government control.
If you take that out, what about their ability to raise a big army?
That takes them out as well. So you solve a lot of problems, including military problems. Because now they're going to be like, hold on, we're only getting the money from what people are paying us in taxes. And we got to make sure that we're spending it properly because we can't inflate the money. So we got to make sure that we're giving out the proper service, the proper security for us, or social services that we need for our people so that they can improve. And we don't have any more. But we can't spend anymore. That's it.
But what about back then, before World War II, when you had the threat of other countries invading you, right? Or other governments invading you. So then because of that fear, it creates this need for government. That's probably how government started. We all were tribes at one point, and we needed to protect ourselves from the next tribe invading us.
Yes. I think that that's always been a problem with tribalism, where everyone wants to invade another country. Like, it was worse, of course, obviously, back in the day, in the medieval times, and even before that, right, the first century. But when you look at government now, I think that we can all live peacefully, especially when everyone's trying to cooperate. And the thing is, when you don't have government controlling money, you won't have money to be able to produce more arms to be able to invade, because you need the money for your people, or they're going to revolt against you. I think that's the basic problem with the authoritarian governments right now, like Russia, where the government controls the money, they control the people, then they just build more military power, and then they realize, oh God, the people are now upset with me. Let's start a war.
Right.
So now I want their resource. Right. Let's get the resource of our neighbor, because that resource is what we need. Was it the uranium or the wheat? Let's, and we are gonna do it in the guise of, well, because NATO is encroaching on us, therefore I'm going to invade them. Well, if that was a problem, then you could have done it diplomatically. Why are you invading another? That doesn't justify it.
Right.
But take out the money. And that's why authoritarian governments, that's why, man, like people like Putin have so much freaking, I think it was Elon who said it. They asked, who's the richest man in the world? He goes, Putin. Right. It's just not on the Forbes list.
Yeah, exactly. or you know what? I would bet that some of the guys from the Philippines could be on that list too.
I wouldn't be surprised. You know,
I mean,
we just don't know how much they own. It's insane. Yeah, so
absolutely, 100%. You know, and I've been investing in crypto for some time now. And I think it's funny because even in the States, even like really successful tech entrepreneurs are still slow to come around to the concept of it. And I still hear that a lot. Bitcoin's a scam. I had David Lee Chu in here, and he said Bitcoin's a scam too. But, and he's a very smart guy, and he invests in a lot of different assets. I think a lot of people say that because maybe they didn't get on the train, and then now they look at it and like, there's no rationale between it for $100,000 Bitcoin. But I've been saying this from day one. it's a hedge against governments.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's the ultimate. Well, it
is.
I don't know if it's the ultimate hedge. It was one of the most ultimate hedge out there, because if a government was to collapse, your money is not worth anything anymore. So the only thing that and trust me, if they could have shut it down, they would have.
Yeah, exactly.
They're still trying to shut it down.
They're trying until today.
Yeah.
And China has tried to ban Bitcoin. In China, they have not succeeded. Since the inception, they've tried.
Right.
Never could stop it. So I liked what you said, that it's the ultimate hedge against government. It's true. It is. Think about it. When the war started in Ukraine, when Russia invaded Ukraine, real story, a journalist was in Ukraine and he was trying to get out. Banks are all bombed. There's no ATM. There's nothing except Bitcoin. So he approached the Ukrainian and said, "Can I borrow your car?" The Ukrainian was trying to get out, but he can't bring his assets out.
Right.
His car, his house, he can't bring anything out. He goes, "You want to buy my car? You're going to give me Bitcoin?" He goes, "Hell yeah." The journalist needed the car to get out physically.
Right.
The Ukrainian needed to get out, but he needed to bring his assets.
Yeah.
So he took the Bitcoin, left Ukraine with the Bitcoin.
Right. Exactly.
The journalist was able to escape with a car.
Yeah.
So that's the power of Bitcoin. When governments fail, Bitcoin is your hedge. And you're able to now leave the country with your assets, with nobody telling you, "You can't take that out. Hold on. How much gold do you have? Or how much money do you have?" "Oh, no, you have, what do you have?" "Nothing. I have my phone."
Yeah.
Or even if they take the phone, doesn't matter. I still have my assets because it's in the cloud. It's in that network, the decentralized network.
So I was born in Vietnam, and my family was we left Vietnam. I was just a baby at the time. My family were Vietnam War refugees.
Oh, wow.
And my parents left on a boat with me as a baby, and they carried gold. They put it in my diaper.
They did. No way.
They put it in my diaper, and our boat was invaded by pirates.
Oh my God.
They took everything.
No, are you serious?
Yeah, they almost took my mom too, but they took everything. My parents had nothing. When
But
they
your
left the
gold
country.
was in your diaper.
Yeah, of course they knew. They looked at, they took everything, right? So that's back then.
Wow.
So now, if you had crypto,
That's such an amazing story.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly, if you put it to today, can you imagine? They can't take your crypto.
Right.
They can't. Even if they take your phone, your laptop, it doesn't matter.
well, imagine if you're Russian.
Yeah.
If you're a Russian and then you're just a normal Russian citizen, and then all of a sudden they put all the sanctions on your country, and your currency is not worth
Yep.
shit anymore because you can't trade your currency anywhere.
Yeah, so that's actually the best case. So when the U.S. confiscated the gold, the U.S. confiscated the dollar reserves of Russia to the tune of, what is it? Like it was massive. It was like a 50 billion U.S. reserve, dollar reserve, and they took it away from Russia. People are, and mind you, I don't necessarily disagree with what they did because I'm not a fan of Putin, but at the same time, that proves to you how important that money is not controlled by any state.
Right.
That proves it to you right there.
Right.
And that's why Russia is now embracing Bitcoin, because they're like, damn, it happened. They were the victims of it. And as a regular citizen, I feel bad for the Russians because now your money is worthless.
Right.
But as a matter of fact, I actually look at most currencies, especially Philippines. I don't look at Philippine peso as anything worthwhile holding. I'm sad to say that my money is in Bitcoin or US dollars, at the very least US dollars, because that's a global reserve. I will not put money into I will not convert money into pesos until I need to use it, because I look at the Philippines as like, oh wow, this I might get into trouble, so I'm going to say it. Philippines is like, let's say you go into an arcade. You have to convert to their tokens so you can, play around. And God, that sounds
So
so
you have
bad.
a bunch of arcade tokens.
Right? And when you leave the arcade, can you convert it back? You can,
No.
right?
You can't convert it back.
You can't in the time zone. I tried. Sir, you have to spend it. Why have to spend? So, wow. So I'm not saying the Philippines is an arcade game, okay? I'm just saying that that's what a country is. It's to make it easy for
Yeah,
people to
right.
understand what your currency is.
Right.
It's only limited to that country.
Right. And
That's why.
governments will create blocks and barriers for you to convert that currency back to another currency because
Yes.
they don't want
They don't.
liquidity to leave, which
Yes.
drops their currency,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But is it really your money if you can't do what you want to do with it?
Exactly. It's not. Once somebody can tell you when you can withdraw and deposit your money, you don't own that money. And the
Exactly.
whole banking system's messed up.
Of course.
Why is it that I put my money into a bank and then they can use the entire reserve to do whatever they want and invest it? So we are all putting our money in BDO or BPI. And what happens? They take the entire amount. Okay, in the Philippines, let's say it's a 10% reserve. So I can leave 10%
Yeah.
and I'll take 90% and invest it in whatever I want so I can make the money. And I'll charge you 10 pesos every time you have to withdraw or even check your balance.
Right.
But it's your money I'm using to be super wealthy. The billionaires are bankers for that
Right.
reason.
Right.
It's crazy system.
And if they want to take it, they can.
They can. And if, let's say, for example, everyone decides, hey, can we get our money back? Oh, good luck. That's
Right.
called a bank run.
Right.
That's what happened in
The U.S. recently.
Did it happen in the U.S.?
Yes, it happened in the U.S. with
Are you talking-
Silicon? What is it?
Oh,
Silicon
yeah.
Bank?
That one, Silicon
Yeah.
Bank, yeah. It happened in Lebanon. I don't know if you know about what happened in Lebanon.
What?
Remember that explosion?
Yeah.
Right? After that, people were worried. They started wanting to withdraw their money. So everyone to the bank. The military was sent. The government was sent to stop people from withdrawing their money. That a woman walked in with a gun and robbed the bank to get her own money. And I think there's a video on it. She actually stood up and said, I am only taking the money that I deposited. That's it. And then she became some sort of folk hero. And that showed you how crazy it is that people trust banks with their money. You don't own that money. Most did not get their money out.
And that's what I've been saying too. And every one of this form of fiat, you believe in stocks, you believe in fiat currency, you believe in the title of your property. That is dependent on the trust of the government. Whereas crypto and Bitcoin, you don't need to trust anybody. And that's the true value of it.
Yep.
There's no need to trust anybody.
Yes.
And how do you create a currency, right? Well, one, you need to have supply and demand. You need to have liquidity, right? So as long as there is liquidity and there's supply and demand and scarcity, you'll continue to have value. You need scarcity too. That's
Yeah.
part of the equation
Yeah.
in any asset.
In any asset, yeah.
Right. So if you want, in terms of an investment, we should more get into, now that we've talked about some of the fundamentals, we should talk about investments, right? Because I mean, what are our options here? I mean, it's obvious to me, one of the reasons why the real estate market, especially the condo market, has been just on a crazy tear for the last 20 years is because there's just nowhere else to put the money.
Yes.
I mean, these politicians or business people have to put their money somewhere.
Yep.
So in a way, and you don't always want to put it in a bank account, right? So then you have the Philippine stock market. You have crypto. Do you have any opinions about the Philippine stock market?
I used to invest in the Philippine stock market until I realized how insanely corrupt the system is to benefit the owners. How insider trading is so rampant. I think that the PSE is trying to regulate it, but unfortunately, I think that it's still very rampant, and I think there's a lot of people that are losing. The retail market, which is the regular guy that trades, is going to lose out on this. It's the big guys that are winning, and not only that, there's not a lot of liquidity in the PSE, and it's shrinking. Because a lot of Filipinos now are trading crypto because they realize, why am I trading a Philippine asset when I'm literally outside of the game? I'm just riding on to hope that, I catch it at the right time. But the big players are the ones that are manipulating this market. Number one. Number two, you have a peso that even if you gain, you're losing because the peso just before the pandemic was less than 50 pesos to the dollar. And today we're almost at 60 to the dollar.
Was that 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it went up to 60 recently, but before pandemic, it was at 40. I remember because I talked to a friend of mine about it, and so I said, "Put your money in at least the US dollar, if not Bitcoin."
Right.
And then he immediately put it, and he goes, "Chris, thank you for telling me this,"
Yeah.
because then it went up to 55.
Right.
So that's the problem. So you're on a losing end of this. So the PSE, I'm sorry, I don't invest in the PSE.
It's not a fair game.
It's not.
It's not a fair game
And
because-
there's no liquidity.
Yeah. I think I think so. If you think about who's investing in the PSE, it's not the everyday people, right? It's not pension funds. Is it?
Yeah, it's
I don't
not.
know. There's no pension funds, right? Are there? So, I mean, it's not a market for everybody. It's a market for kind of like the elites,
Yeah.
right? And their family and everything
Yeah.
else. But that being said, why would they crash their own market?
So, how insider trading works is that, let's say you want to be able to cash out, right? So you sell out and you make the most of the shares that you own and be able to take the money and screw everyone else. Sometimes the end game is not to make your company valuable or profitable. Sometimes just cash out and exit.
It's an exit.
It's an exit. Yeah, it's an exit plan. It's an
Right.
exit strategy. Actually, funny. You when you mentioned you were in startup industry, the startup industry
Uses that.
use that exact same strategy of inflating it and getting out even when the company is not valuable.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say it, and I have friends in the startup industry, and I've said this. I said, guys, this startup thing, stop calling yourself a startup,
Yeah.
because if you call yourself a startup, you'll never be a business.
Yeah.
You'll always be a startup,
Right.
number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I have heard so many pitches.
Yeah.
And I'd say 80% of the pitches are shit.
Right.
All right?
100%.
And I've met a lot of startup founders from a decade now, from a decade. And I remember they would tell me their idea. They'd show me their business. They would show me the, prototype. And I'd say, "What's your business model?" And I could hear them, and I know that it won't make money.
Right.
But yet they still get funding.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe should I go into the startup business?
It is. So here's how it works. Granted, some companies do make it big and
Yeah.
they do make a shitload of money. You think about Google and
Oh, yeah, of course.
Facebook. Of course.
Oh.
They dominate, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's chasing that dream. But typically, a lot of times how it works is, especially I think the fundamentals, especially in developing countries like Southeast Asia, for example. And I've seen this happen, and we were kind of on the same train at some point. These startup companies, there's always one example of a startup company that was the dominant player, whether they made money or not, sold to some Hong Kong stock exchange, the Australian stock exchange. I remember guys like in our space, like Property Guru or iProperty, who sold for $200 million. Not that they were profitable at the time, but they sold it to, say, the Australian stock exchange or something like that. So they had this high PE ratio, right? So it wasn't even, I don't know if they were earning much, but let's say they had this high PE ratio in the 20s, 30s, whatever, right? Now, all of a sudden, they can acquire all these other startups.
Yes.
Because it was off of sales. Oftentimes, it wasn't even off of earnings. It was a multiple of sales. So they would acquire your business as a startup as long as you fit their story. Whether it wasn't a 20x on earnings, it could have been like whatever your sales is. It could be a 10x on sales or whatever. That would up their valuation because now all of a sudden they have more revenues coming in.
Yes.
Create a arbitrage, right? So if I'm a big company and if I'm traded at a high multiple, I could buy your unprofitable startup and show
that your revenues are actually
show growth.
Yes.
I could show a story to the market that now I'm in the Philippines, I'm in Singapore, and blah
You
blah
have
blah.
all this
and
expansion,
I
you're
have this
scaling.
expansion. I have these revenues, and people from the equities market, they're looking. They can't fully comprehend the whole story behind it. They're looking for certain metrics.
Yeah.
So it's really a play on the metrics. It's what we call financial engineering.
Oh wow! Right. Damn,
Right?
that's
and
interesting.
So as a startup, I mean, your whole hopes is to become a dominant player some way, and then exit.
Yeah.
Whether you become profit, you don't even need to reach profitability, or maybe you do. At some point, the idea is to be the number one or number two and either sell to a big player
Yep.
or exit to the market. This
Yeah.
was happening in the Philippines too when we had I think the PSC opened up tech. I think Nick's Nileto was
Surpass.
they're the ones
Yeah.
who they were the ones
They were
who
the darling.
they're the ones who went public.
Yeah.
They were one of the first ones that went public,
Yep.
and they were also acquiring a lot of other startups. So
And a lot
I
of
don't
them
know.
now-
I don't know what the math, or they were financial engineer, or if there was profitable businesses, but I know they were acquiring a bunch of other companies.
A lot of the companies they
Yeah.
acquired, they're bankrupt
right.
or closed.
Right.
I actually know the companies they closed because I dealt with the companies, and great business model. I actually heard it was like, this is a good business model. And then eventually I found out they were bought by Surpass. So I remember that because when Surpass went IPO, it was a big deal. They were able to, I was like, because one of the founders, is a friend of mine, and I remember saying, wow, I saw him after the IPO and we were chatting. I'm like, so this is what it's like to talk to a billionaire. Because each one of them, I think there's 4 of them, and it went for, I think, 6 billion. I think that they raised 6 billion. I was like, wow, so you're worth 1.5 billion, huh? I was like, wow. It was fascinating to me. But then they looked like they were going in the right direction. And they had all these great ideas about live streaming. They were going to go into do something like what Bigo Live, Kumu was trying to do, or
Yeah.
what they're doing now.
Yeah.
But nothing ever panned out. So because they had so much money to spend that they forgot to be frugal about it to be able to make the business work. It was about expansion. Is it working? So I think that's where the problem lies. That's why their valuation now just completely collapsed.
Well, I can tell you, from their standpoint, just to kind of defend them a little bit, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So once you raise capital, the expectation of
yes.
growth is so insane.
Yeah.
It just becomes a very vicious cycle where you're constantly raising money, trying to grow.
Yeah.
And that's where the fundamentals kind of go out the door a bit, right?
Yeah, but by the way, Nix is a great guy. I don't know him. I met him once.
Yeah, smart guy. Yeah,
Smart guy, and he's into crypto now.
Yeah.
And he has made a lot of great investments.
Right.
He has made a lot of great investments, and he has a lot of good stuff happening right now. More power. But I just see that you're right. It is a vicious cycle that you get eaten up with.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's where it becomes important to ask yourself what's more important, going IPO or running a business. Because going IPO may not be the best solution right now, or actually going public may not
Right.
be the best answer
Right.
to what you're trying to do.
Right.
So yeah, but just in the Philippines generally, I'm not I haven't been a fan of Philippine investments. I really am outside of the Philippines when it comes to investing. And I don't know if you know this, but if you check all the investment assets that you can invest in, like what can we invest in?
Real estate.
Real estate, stocks,
Right.
bonds, what
Right.
else? So you look at all of that. There's a list.
Right.
Did you know this? This
Yeah.
list of all the assets all over the world.
Yeah, okay.
And they check the market cap and the growth and the profitability, the return on each asset. Do you know
Crypto
what
is
the number one
one.
is?
Crypto. 100%.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, 100%.
You add up every asset.
Yeah.
Bitcoin still outperforms all of it.
Yes. By far
By
and away.
far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not even close.
Right.
It's an insane amount. And that's over a decade of investing. So they checked over 1 decade and Bitcoin comes out so far ahead.
I'm going to play devil's advocate,
Go.
even though I don't necessarily agree with the statement. But let's let's talk about this.
Oh, please.
Bitcoin is not an asset because it doesn't produce anything.
This gold?
No.
Exactly.
But a lot of people don't hold gold either. A lot of people don't believe in holding gold.
But gold is one of the most valuable assets right now. Through the ETFs, people still
Only because it's scarce.
yes. So
If a meteor hit this world with a ton of gold, the price of gold.
or if they discover gold in another planet or maybe the moon.
Yeah.
There was somebody saying that what if because we're becoming interplanetary, they discover, oh my God, there's all this gold here.
There's got to be definitely gold
for sure.
in the universe, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you find all sorts of element anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
So for me, people that don't understand Bitcoin, it's just they haven't taken the time to study it. But if you do take the time to study it, you will find that it's valuable. A lot of the people that when I started, I remember I posted about Bitcoin. I put it on my Facebook. I said, what do you guys think of Bitcoin? Simple question. This is when I first bought Bitcoin. My God, I got 99% people making fun of me. It was hilarious. And I don't get affected because I understand it. And I know that they just don't know better. So I'm not offended by somebody who doesn't understand it to tell me it's a scam because I just know you don't know better. That's it. So I had two guys. One was a very wealthy man. Very wealthy. He has several houses in Forbes Park and Das Marinas Village. And he doesn't need to invest anymore. He literally is living off passive income. He said to me, you don't know anything about investment, Chris. Bitcoin is worth nothing. He made a bet with me, 1 to 5. He goes, I'll bet you 1 to 5. The Bitcoin is not going to hit a new all-time high this year. That was 2020. That was 2020. I go, so if I bet 2, you will make it 10. He goes, yeah. I go, game. Let's do it. And Bitcoin that time when I made that bet with him was only...
in Bitcoin?
Huh?
Did you bet him in Bitcoin?
I wish I did. I wish I did. That was my mistake. I bet him with fiat, with pesos. But I wish I did bet him with Bitcoin. And that's what my
that
biggest
would have
mistake.
added more insult to the wound for him.
Oh my God. Yeah, I would have rubbed it right in, right? So anyway, long story short, December 2020 came along, hit the all-time high. Messaged him. I said, and the point I'm trying to make is this. He didn't understand it. And he kept bragging to me how stocks were more valuable, gold is more valuable, and that's nothing, blah, blah. We debated about this. And I don't mind debating. And at the end of it, he couldn't answer the questions I kept pondering of how are stocks valued and the problem with stocks and why gold, do you believe gold or real estate is more valuable in this sense? And what are the problems with gold and real estate compared to what Bitcoin solves? And then I had a discussion with a research analyst for the Philippine Stock Exchange who told me, yeah, but with stocks, you get a certificate. I go, yeah, but that certificate is a piece of paper. I said, Bitcoin is validated. You don't need a middleman to validate it. It is verified by an entire blockchain that you own it. But how do I know? I don't have a piece of paper. Oh, a piece of paper validates it. Do you know I can give you a piece of paper that I own the Philippines?
Right.
Does that validate it? I could get a birth certificate. And he goes, he couldn't defend it. And today he's saying, yeah, you're right, Chris, it's a good asset, but I'm still not investing in it. There, the ego comes in. I'm not investing in it. That's it. I like stocks. I'm sticking with stocks.
It would have changed if there was appropriate on-ramps and off-ramps to fiat. Well, the only reason why you need that is because it's not traded.
Yes.
No, people don't trade in Bitcoin or crypto.
Yep.
People trade in fiat. So because of that, and the government forces it that way.
Yes.
Because you can't simply just withdraw a bunch of Bitcoin into your bank account, can you?
You can't.
Right?
Yeah.
And so until the banks hold it in custody and allow you to trade it, and that's never going to I don't think the governments are ever going to let that happen unless you're some of those other governments like El Salvador or Switzerland or something like that. Until that happens, there's always, if they cut off the on-ramp and off-ramp to fiat, that's how you can try to kill it.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And until that happens, if they didn't do that, then everyone would be on board with Bitcoin by now.
Absolutely.
100%. Nobody would even look at fiat.
Yep. So again, that brings us back to the talk about arbitrage. Global arbitrage. Because if you as a country decide to cut off the off-ramp and on-ramp to crypto, the money will go somewhere else. The people will go somewhere else.
Exactly.
And eventually go to a country that says, hey, I can spend it there freely. I will go there. And you will end up losing out on this. And that's the fact. That's why now it's amazing that the US is about to embrace Bitcoin in 10 days from now, or 7 days.
Let's make a prediction about this. So let's just follow the line where you're saying. Let's assume that governments like El Salvador, Switzerland, Singapore, I know some European countries, they definitely need the liquidity.
Yep.
It's these countries that are hurting.
Yep.
Right? The Europeans, for example, all the wealthy people have left Europe because of the high taxes. Right? Countries, this is it. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. When you look at a country like Europe, all the politics are controlled by the old people, like Spain, for example, or dwindling population.
Yeah.
Young people are leaving.
Yep.
They're coming to Asia to create opportunities for themselves, and they don't have to pay taxes back to Europe, Great opportunity. Why wouldn't you do it? If you make money in Europe,
Yes.
why the fuck would you stay in Europe? Go somewhere else,
Yep.
right? Make a life somewhere else. So that's what's happening. All the money is just flooding or just leaving. Certain countries are going to get to a certain point where the pain becomes big enough where they're going to be like,
Yeah.
okay, let's bring the money back. Let's open up crypto, right? And let's make a bold future prediction. At some point, you're right. Maybe if governments don't play ball with this,
Yeah.
maybe it becomes big enough and powerful enough that if you don't play ball, then you're going to see a flight of money out.
Yeah.
Because maybe at some point people will wake up to the realization that you don't really own your money.
Yes.
Your money is not really your money.
I think people are waking up to that realization. It's just that, remember that we've been taught from there's generations that have been taught since the 1950s or earlier that put your money in the bank.
Right.
And that inflation is good and that government is good. And now the veils have been, unraveled. Everything's now visible. Now we know better.
Right.
So basically the matrix has been exposed.
Right.
And I think people are starting to realize it slowly. It takes a lot of time because when you tell somebody that your money's not really yours if it's in the bank, what do you mean?
Right.
Where else do you put it? And
Right.
it's such a paradigm shift.
Right.
So it takes a lot of time to do that, but it's happening, especially with the younger kids
Uh-huh.
that are coming into crypto because they're now seeing, why would you put your money in the bank? You should hold on to your money. That's how they're thinking now. So that generation's starting to grow up and they're going to become the new leaders. And that's where that shift happens. I'd say one more generation and we've got that complete shift. And the world will eventually, everything will be on the blockchain. That's the technological shift that has to happen anyway, because the blockchain is Web3. It is the evolution of the internet. It is the evolution of ownership and data. Because right now with Web2, the problem with data is that none of us own data. Who owns it? The corporations, Google,
Right.
Facebook.
Right.
They own the data. With Web3, you own the data.
You're talking about DAO, smart contracts.
I'm talking
You're
about everything about the Web3, about
Right.
here's somebody was asking me, what do you mean you own the data? Okay. When you log into Facebook, who has your password?
Facebook.
Facebook. Your photos, Facebook. Everything you place there. It's with, and they even have a fine print that says that we own all of the stuff you upload, right? With the Web3, it's different. When you log in, what are you really doing? You're allowing them to access your data. But the password, they don't have access. What they just have access is the idea that, yes, I'm a person. Yes, I have the money or the funds to be able to transact with you, but you don't know how much it is. But it's just with crypto, it's just saying, yes, I allow you to access a certain amount of it. And every transaction, I own the data and I allow you, Facebook, to transact with me.
Right.
The power shift is
Right.
different. Now
Right.
I own the power.
Right.
So then every time somebody wants to see my photo, I can charge a transaction fee for every time. So now the money is distributed to everyone and it's not centralized.
Right.
That's the power of Web3.
Well, I mean, everyone's talking about this Web3 revolution or evolution. I think in concept, the idea of it makes sense that there's not only are you democratizing currency, now you're democratizing business models.
Yes.
Right? Imagine a democratized Google or Facebook or Airbnb.
Yep.
Right? So that concept, get that. And investors are just chomping at the bit about building something like this. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
No.
Because I think the only thing, it's very difficult to execute something like that. I think the first play is going to be fintech, which is already happening, which trading platforms.
Yes.
Question is, could there ever be a democratized bank?
So okay, great you mentioned about the trading platform. So right now the exchanges are centralized, right? There are decentralized exchanges.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right. And that's completely automated.
Yeah.
So
No one owns these
Exactly.
decentralized platforms.
yeah.
Right?
And the trade that we're doing
Right.
is literally wallet to wallet.
Right.
They're just the middleman
Right.
in the sense that they're just creating
Right.
the trade, but they're not holding anything.
Yeah. And nobody owns it. No one's
Exactly.
profiting from it.
So I think banks will that will also happen with banks. I think it'll happen with everything. But you're right. Not in the next
It'll
maybe.
happen with the financial world first.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, we're probably going over where
I know,
over
and it's
people's
too
head
deep.
and
This
stuff.
is so deep.
But let's go back to the okay. Let's not forget real estate. So I said, okay, I always think about, okay, what's the hedge, right? We talked about crypto being a hedge on currency, but you can't eat it. You can't produce something from it. So I don't go away from real estate because land has true intrinsic value, right? Now, granted, if this whole world was like we had a zombie apocalypse, anything would go, right? Now, your land title means nothing. But, having land is still something that you can live on, you can produce food. So let's not forget that. Let's talk about real estate for a second. What do you think? Do you not see value in real estate?
So I have real estate investments. I'm trying to get rid of it.
All of it?
I am. Honestly, I'd rather just put it in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I am that much of a maximalist.
Wow.
I sold my insurance. I redeemed my insurance. My broker was like, "What do you mean you're redeeming all your insurance?" Yep. You mean you're not worried? Like, what if something happens to you and you don't have that insurance money to take care of you when something happens when you're dead? See, I go, see, listen to that idea. I'm dead. What do I care? I want that money while I'm alive.
Right.
So when I took that money out of the insurance, I now have more money than that insurance could ever cover me for that same money I got.
I get you, but you don't believe in diversifying your assets and portfolio?
Okay, so here's the interesting thing.
Like I said, you can't eat Bitcoin.
I love that question. So here's the thing. So let's say you have 4 cars that are racing, and you know for a fact that this one is going to beat all of them by far, and there's no doubt about it ever that it could ever be beaten. Would you really diversify?
Yes, I would.
Oh,
I would. I still would. Because there are use cases for each and every one of those cars or assets. Well, if everything is just a straight line race, then sure, I put it all in that one car. But when you're talking about diversifying your asset, you're not just a straight line race to what your net worth is.
Oh, okay.
You're also protecting yourself against either a catastrophic event or regardless of what this market does or that market. There are other reasons to own real estate.
okay.
For example.
Yeah, and by the way, I have to say that there is no right or wrong answer. I believe that yes, there is a reason for diversification, and there's a reason to be. But I hate making that advice. Actually, I will never give anyone that advice to put your eggs in one basket. Every time somebody asks me, I'll say, "Oh, just put 10% in Bitcoin."
Yeah.
I'll say keep the 90%, whatever.
Right, exactly.
But I am doing the exact opposite of the advice I give people.
Okay.
I'm a maximalist, and I am a little bit of a risk taker, and I've always been, I guess. And I don't mind the risk. And when I see something that I know is a winning horse, I will just put it all in. I mean, that's how I am.
Let's take an example. Let's say you put 100% of your net worth into crypto. Okay. Crypto goes through its ebb and flow.
Yes.
And I think over the long run, you're going to win. No question about that. But crypto is taking a dive, crashes for whatever reason. Governments decide to go all band together and shut it down together, right? Takes a big nosedive. And then someone in your family has to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
You need the cash.
Yep.
What do you do? See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
you need to diversify for the protection of the unknown. And I think Filipinos need to be educated about that.
That's why I never will tell anyone to put 100%. So, and then the other thing I always tell people is this. When I say I'm 100%, I have a cash reserve. I still have a cash reserve. That's in fiat.
Okay.
That's just stuck there.
Okay.
Waiting for that catastrophe.
Right.
And when that catastrophe happens, I'm gonna unleash that reserve, that war chest. So yeah, I still have that, but everything else I'm all in.
I remember when during COVID, and there were talks about food supply being cut out, and we didn't know how bad. We didn't know how bad this was going to get. We were all looking for farmland.
You were?
Yeah, I was too. A lot of people were buying up farmland.
I remember.
In fact, you know who became the biggest farmland holder in the United States? Bill Gates.
Oh my God, he was buying
Right?
farm.
And so does Jeff Bezos. He buys a bunch of.
Oh,
land,
wow.
too. Yeah, he buys
Eh.
a bunch of. I don't know if it's agriculture. He doesn't buy a lot of he bought a bunch of land, but a lot of these people are hedging and buying a lot of land. These tech billionaires.
Yeah. In the Philippines, a lot of people ended up buying property outside of the city.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot.
Right.
And one of my friends ended up now he lives in El Nido. And he literally moved away from Manila because he got stuck in a resort in Batangas, I think Batangas. And then for about a year in COVID, and then he decided, I actually like this. And now he lives in El Nido, but his business and work is still in Manila. So he flies here, but he lives his family in El Nido and he loves it. The country life, you know.
Plus, there's other perspective and reasons for different investment vehicles. Give you an example. There is wealth creation, and then there's wealth preservation. Part of wealth preservation is how do you optimize for taxes, right? And so certain investment vehicles give you that, like real estate.
Yeah.
If you understand how the system works, you can really offset a lot of, you can save a lot of money on taxes or write off a lot of taxes on real estate structures.
Axie Infinity. Were you here? How long have you been in the Philippines?
15 years.
Okay, so you were here during the Axie Infinity craze during the pandemic. Did you hear about this?
No, what is it?
So Axie Infinity is this game, a crypto game.
Uh-huh.
Then what happened was when people lost their jobs, they were at home, they couldn't make money. They started playing this game and they were getting Axie SLP, Smooth Love Potion tokens, where they can convert to pesos.
Okay.
They were earning 20 to 50,000 pesos a month.
Okay.
Regular employees that didn't have a job are now earning 20 to 50,000 pesos a month playing this game at home.
Right.
So now they would convert it to pesos, and then companies would now call up their employees and say, hey, I have something for you. So the employers become the managers, which they buy the assets, the crypto NFTs that are able to mine and play this game. So now I would buy it. I would buy this NFT. This is a monster. And I say, okay, you get to play it for me. When you play it, we'll split it. So they split it. So you make 50 grand, I make 50 grand. So everyone was making money. The BIR said, we're going to tax it. The question was how? Because it was all in this token that's not even recognized in the tax code.
Right.
And then when somebody cashes it out, somebody pays you in pesos, sends it to your bank account. But for what?
Yeah.
If the BIR says you got that from Axie, prove it. How do you prove it?
Right.
There's no transaction. The money just went into my account.
Right.
That was the problem. That's why they never could tax it. It was hilarious. It was just a declaration, but everyone knew you couldn't tax it.
But that might make sense if you're talking about small transactions. But do that. Let's say you have like let's say you have like $5 million of crypto that you turn to fiat. Do you think you can get that into the bank account?
You can if you regularly make a transaction like that in other businesses where it looks like a regular transaction. But if not, if it suddenly happens, you will be flagged by the banking system. Now the question is this: why would you suddenly put in $5 million into your bank account?
Well, let's say you have $100 million.
Okay.
Let's say you have $100 million in crypto, which is not uncommon.
Yep.
And you're taking profits. You're taking profits, right? That's part of an investment strategy. You should take profits from time to time, right? So you cash out $5 million in the bank account, it gets shut down, or they're like, okay, they flag you for money laundering.
Yep. But you keep it in USDT,
right,
which is still crypto,
right?
So it doesn't go into the bank.
Right. So
I don't hold US dollars.
Right.
I hold US dollar crypto, USDT, USDC.
Right.
And that's all I hold. And then from USDT or USDC, whenever I travel, it goes directly into whatever country through the debit card where I spend it in whatever currency I spend it on.
So USDT was started by an organization, and there was questions of whether there was enough money in the bank to support it. And what if there was a bank run on USDT and USDC?
Right. I love that. So the irony is they have more reserves that it's pretty. They declare it. They declare all the reserves. It's audited. They have more reserves than a regular U.S. bank.
Wow.
Which has zero.
Wow.
So they're saying, they actually said, it's interesting that the US regulators are telling us that we may not have the liquidity or the assets to cover all of this money that's all over the internet, all over crypto. But have you guys checked the bank account you're on?
Hypocrisy, right?
Hypocrisy. Why are you after us? In your own bank, you're requiring them to have zero reserve.
Yeah.
Why are you after us?
Right.
But even though they were after Tether, the company, Tether goes, here. It's ironic how regulation works. Look at all the regulated companies that committed fraud in the United States. FTX is a great
100%,
example.
yeah.
Then they go after Binance, which is unregulated.
Right.
For a lot of reasons, just to show that, hey, we look real. U.S. government look really dumb here, where all their regulated companies went under, and got affected and committed fraud, and yet the unregulated ones are the ones that are thriving and that are honest with their customers.
Interesting.
That's what fascinates me. That how is it that you tell me regulation protects the investor, and yet the ones regulated are the ones scamming the investors?
Jeez.
It's funny.
Yeah.
So now CZ, the owner of Binance, goes to jail for 6 months just to make it look like, oh, Bill, Sam Bankman-Fried will go to jail. And we got to show something to the people or we're going to look really dumb. This is regulated. And they got away with billions.
Right. And even Ripple, remember? Ripple, they were going after Ripple.
Yeah, they were going after, now Ripple. Look at Ripple now.
Blowing up now because...
Yeah, and now the US government's going to adopt Ripple.
Right.
And I think what's going to happen is Ripple through XRP, so the ones watching that know XRP, is going to replace Swift. I actually think that will happen.
Swift is...
It's old. It's antiquated. It's analog.
So I just bought a property in Japan. Interesting story, right? I had to buy it in cash because I wasn't able to qualify for bank financing yet until all the corporation was set up, but I needed to close on this property. It was bought through a developer. It was a brand new house. I had to transfer this funds over to them by a certain date or else I was going to lose my deposit.
Wow.
I made the transfer from the bank here.
Oh my God.
Imagine me as an American transferring 500 grand to Japan, right? So everyone was like, you better get this money in or else you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your deposit. And we thought if we transferred it like 5 days ahead, it was enough. It took almost 3 weeks.
Oh my God, it took 3. What was the explanation?
There was no explanation, but I had to talk to my bank several times. I had to talk to their banks, had to go and check on things. Wait, hold on. Okay. So my banks had problems. Their banks had to check. It went through an intermediary. It was literally 3 weeks. And I honestly wasn't even sure I was going to get it there or not. You know?
Wow.
So, and back to what you're saying about the income taxes here. I don't understand why if this is true, why isn't more Filipinos investing in crypto? Why don't they? Because especially if you're a big business, you should be putting all your reserves in there because you're not paying, especially if you don't have to pay income taxes on it. Or if you can get around the income tax. A legal way. Because for me, I can't do it. I'm a U.S. citizen. So anything that hits my bank, I have to report back to the U.S. government.
Exactly. That's the big difference. In the U.S., in your tax return, it actually states you have to declare all your crypto.
Yeah.
If not, you will go to jail.
Right.
So that's why Philippines is way behind on legislation.
Right.
Because it's not a popular legislation for the masses.
Right.
Because the masses don't understand crypto. Unless the masses understand crypto, government will not do anything because it's too much time to regulate. Lawmakers will not spend the time creating a bill for something that most people will not understand because that doesn't get them votes to get elected back. They would rather do a bill on housing, on low-income earners because I want to help the poor because this bill is popular and it'll make me look good.
Gets votes.
Yeah, but it doesn't really help the poor. It's just all cosmetics.
Right.
So that's why. But having said that, I think a lot of Filipinos are just not into crypto because they don't understand it.
Right.
They don't understand the loopholes. And I'm not the one to try to evangelize people on this.
Right.
To each his own. And I don't want to be the one saying it out loud and suddenly people are going to go. I don't want anyone going after me and saying, Chris, are you the one spreading this? Let me find a loophole in the law, because that's the truth. With the law, it can be weaponized.
Right.
Even if you're not doing anything wrong, they can make it that you did something wrong because of how convoluted the laws are. That, trust me, everyone can be a criminal.
Well, that's the scary thing about, the same thing is happening in the States. You see that with Trump and everything else. Well, I don't know, but,
Well, questionable. But the fact is, you're right. It is, laws are weaponized against the people that do not hold the laws.
Right.
But the lawmakers are insulated against it. It's amazing. It's amazing how this system works.
It's funny because I was watching this. In the U.S., the government, senators, government politicians in the U.S., for example, apparently the insider trader laws don't apply to them.
I wouldn't be surprised. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised.
So when you were talking about how the Philippine stock market really just benefit the people in the know, and it's the same in the U.S. really. It's like, it's not a fair game.
Yeah.
Even though they create these so-called rules that's supposed to create an even playing field, it's not.
Yeah. A great example is in the Philippines, right? We created this transparency law where you're, as a government official, you need to declare your assets and liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And when Duterte came into power, the funny part was suddenly his own ombudsman says he's not required to show you his assets and liabilities because of this executive order we created. But an executive order is created by who? The president. And it insulates the president from showing his assets and liabilities when all other presidents had to show their assets and liabilities, and every government official. And yet he didn't have to.
Right.
And that's the law.
Right.
Wow. How funny. The lawmaker creates laws to protect themselves.
Right.
Not the people.
Right.
That's the problem.
So you and I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff we talk about. Really, when you think about it, we're always trying to figure out the right strategy to get ahead. Right? And we want to empower people to do the same. But is there any hope here? Like, do we have hope here in this country? What's the future going to look like? Where's the hope?
So the hope is that people realize that the power is with them when it comes to the government. What do I mean by that? That people forget that their vote actually is their power, and by the people they elect. Unfortunately, majority of Filipinos will forego that power by just electing anyone, taking that power for granted. And they will just elect anyone popular, even if they're corrupt, or because that person, that government official or that politician gave them a little bit of money, they believe that 1,000 or 5,000 pesos is more valuable than the power of that vote. Because they believe, I got 5,000, I don't care what he does, but he's getting billions from your 5,000 pesos, where that should be going to you via government services. So people have to understand that the power is with them, and they should not let that go.
You're assuming that they believe their vote is actually counted properly.
So,
and there's no tampering.
Right. So, those are the rules. And if you don't believe that your vote counts and you believe that it's completely being tampered, then why vote? Then we should just have a revolution.
Do democracy really work in countries like this?
No. Democracy doesn't work.
I was watching, I did a video on this and I was studying what Lee Kuan Yew was talking about. And he said, the Philippines made a big mistake in terms of copying the U.S. Constitution and trying to copy the system of the U.S. In the U.S., it works because the U.S. is full of like natural resources. It's vast. It's, it has so many things going for it. And it's such a young country. But in a country like this, where it's like a third world country or a developing nation, it needs a very strong, honest leadership. Like in the case of Singapore, he was almost a dictator, but very honest and not corrupt, and it worked for Singapore.
So you're talking about a benevolent dictator.
Yeah.
So the idea of a benevolent dictator, I think Philippines wants that. Filipinos want that. That's why they voted for Duterte, thinking that would be their benevolent dictator. It's not the case, obviously. Right? But they still believe it. Now, when it comes to copying a government system, I don't think it's the system, yes, of course, it plays a little bit of a factor into it. But the other factor is respect for the law, regardless of what the law is. You can put any law in place. When people don't respect the law, then the law fails.
Right.
That's where the biggest problem lies. We don't respect the law here. The law here is not something to be followed. It's a suggestion.
But why would people follow the law when they see policies maker and government officials doing whatever they want?
Right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, sure. And I think it's the problem is Filipinos, because we're such a young democracy. We're not used to democracy.
Yeah.
We're not used to having that freedom to do and say whatever we want. Because before that, we didn't really have a true democracy. We have a semi-democracy. And what happened with that was people were, especially during the time of martial law, where people were not really, they didn't really have the idea, the freedom to say and do whatever they want. So people were afraid. So they followed the law because of fear. And then when democracy came around in 1986, this is where all the chaos happened, because people thought they can do whatever they want. I'll try to give it on a basic level where people can relate to. Traffic laws. Why do jeepney drivers drive through a red light or stop on a green light and literally stop in the middle of the street to pick up a passenger? Because they know they can.
right.
And they know they can, so they will. So that's somebody who does not respect the law, because they feel like I can. Therefore, I do it.
Right.
And that's the problem. A lot of people here, Filipinos generally here, believe that the law does not apply to them. There's a certain sense of entitlement because it's a democracy. So I'm really just tying it in that way. But that is the inherent problem of what we have in the Philippines.
But the U.S. set up their rules so with checks and balances, because they were revolting from a monarch.
Yep.
When they created their constitution. So in a way, it's supposed to have checks and balances to kind of protect against, like an overarching dictator or whatever. Yeah. But in a way, it also works against you, because if you need to make changes and you need to make, hard decisions, you're dealing with strife and debate all along the way, and it makes it very difficult for anybody, for any real change to happen.
Yeah. So that's where the delicate balance happens, because then you ask yourself, as an American, would you prefer no checks and balance? That could lead to a completely authoritarian government that could end up becoming the next Germany, Nazi Germany.
Right.
That's the scary part.
Right.
Philippines. I like that point, because in the Philippines we were trying to copy that, but the problem is our institutions are not as well embedded to be able to defend against an authoritarian leader. That's why when that authoritarian leader came into place, it was able to turn the other branches into rubber stamps. The Congress, the Senate, the judicial system. All the co-equal branches of government did not become co-equal, but became subservient to the executive department. And that was the big problem. So when you talk about democracy, I actually say, and I got into a big debate with people that are too liberal about this. They said, how dare you, Chris, say that democracy doesn't work? And I said, all I'm saying is that instead of allowing every single Joe to be able to run for president, you don't need a college education to run.
Right.
You could even be a convict and you can run. At least let's put something. Let's make them a college grad. Could we at least have that basic?
Yeah.
I mean, every government employee has to have a college education.
Right.
Why can't we have that same standard with president? Let's just start with that, because that's not a democracy. But what is a democracy? There are degrees to a democracy. It doesn't mean because I say add a qualification, it's not a democracy. It still is. Anyone can run. You just please graduate.
Right.
Please show me that you're competent. Start with that.
Yeah.
And yet I get a lot of backlash by just that suggestion. By the fact that how dare you put a requirement on somebody who wants to be president? Would you prefer what we have? Now look what we're getting.
Right.
We're getting idiots running for president and even Senate, and they don't even know how to make laws.
Right.
That's the basic problem. So that's why I don't believe in democracy completely. I think there is a degree of democracy that we can have. And I think, okay, how about this? Not that we can have a degree of democracy we deserve. Because a democracy that we don't deserve will disappear and will turn into an authoritarian government. And then that whole cycle starts all over again. So then until we deserve the democracy, a democracy that we fought for, truly fought for. And I think that's why the US democracy is strong, because you guys fought for it. My God, that civil war you guys had between the North and the South, that solidified the government that you have, and that's what created the strong institutions to protect it against any authoritarian government.
Right.
But then there's the pros and cons, like you said. But I think those are good pros and cons. Debate is good.
I don't think you can copy another system with different values and
Yes.
history. You have to create your own.
Yeah.
You have to create what works here based on what you know of the culture and the values of the people here. You know, and in the same in Japan. You know, Japan follows a parliament system, but, you know, this was kind of pushed upon them after World War II.
Yeah.
It was a feudalistic government. But, you know, and in Japan, the younger population doesn't feel like they have a say.
Right.
You know, they leave it to the older generation. And when you leave it to the older generation, everything favors the older generation.
Yeah.
You know, so it's hard to say. Like, I think, you know, it's just not to take one system and move it over to another and say that that's the way it should be. And this is what America has pushed to the world.
Their style of democracy, right?
And it doesn't fit for every culture.
And I have to say, the idea of the capitalism in the US, I don't like it.
Right.
I mean, hey, you could be a billionaire, sure, but I think there's a big disparity that causes the problems with the rich and the poor, which is making America poor in general, where you have several billionaires, a handful, yet everyone else is suffering and struggling. I prefer a more, I don't know what you call it, but something that distributes the wealth a little bit better. Nothing against billionaires, you worked hard for it, but the way the capitalistic system works really will reward you so much for being the one that started it all and becoming a billionaire. But that's such an inequality that I think that resource can be spread a lot further than what's happening right now. It's now being gatekept by the billionaires in the US, where that can do so much good for the world. Can you imagine if just the 10 billionaires, the top 10 of the US, was able to spread the wealth all over the world? We would not have poverty.
But you have to be careful of that.
Sure, absolutely.
Because if you're not careful, the billionaires will leave. And did you notice that Jack Ma came back recently?
Oh my God. Oh, Jack Ma. I feel so bad for the guy.
All of a sudden, he went missing.
Yes.
He spoke up against
China,
the Chinese government. He went missing.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden he's back.
Yeah.
You know why he's back? Because China's suffering right now from, you know,
the real estate things.
No,
yeah. The economy.
They're struggling with their economy.
Yeah.
And they need the billionaires to come back, or they need the entrepreneurs to come back.
Yeah. When I say I believe that billionaires should, you know, maybe make the world more equal or fair in that sense. I'm not saying that the government should step in and start like either overtaxing or scaring their wealthy. Not that
they have the power to leave and take their capital elsewhere.
What I'm just saying is more, there has to be a system to be able to, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the solution is. Just to be able to distribute the wealth better. That's it. Not necessarily taxation, but just the way the systems are built. If you look at other countries, I like some of the countries I see in Europe where there are wealthy people, but the difference between the wealthy, the degree between the wealthy and the poor, are actually closer towards the middle than in the US, where, wow, dude, I mean, I know Philippines is a third world country, but the number of homeless I see in the US is insane.
Look, I 100% agree with you. There needs to be a better distribution of wealth. Nobody disputes that. Not even the billionaires will dispute that. Okay? But I don't think that's necessarily the fault of the billionaires. I think, think about it this way. We talked about inflation. Let's hear me out here. So government's pushing inflation, but in reality, I've been saying this forever. Like the true measure, they measure inflation by consumable goods, but they don't measure inflation by the price of a home, for example, or assets, investment assets. Okay, sure. You flood the country full of printed money. What do you think? Sure, some of that money will go into consumer goods, but a lot of it, most of it, will go into financial assets. And guess what? if you want to become wealthy, and Filipinos need to understand this, the only way to wealth, especially in this day and age, is to own assets.
Yeah.
You cannot get wealthy from an income. No income is going to make you wealthy.
Yeah.
It's assets. And so, yeah, sure, you can own a business, which is an asset, and that can produce a high income for you. But in general, you're not going to become wealthy. You're always going to be poor. And this disparity is going to continue to grow the more they print money, and it is because inflation isn't measured by that.
Yeah,
So
it's not.
so what happens is disparity so if you own assets, if you are the lucky ones who own asset early on, you will continue to grow in net wealth.
Yeah.
Whereas if you didn't own asset, and that's why this younger generation feels so hopeless, because they can't even buy a home nowadays.
That's such a sad reality of life right now. And how I wish this kind of conversation, I wish that it would resonate with the youth, with the Filipinos, especially the underprivileged. I don't know if it will. I've met some that are educated already that still live in those areas. And I actually spoke to a couple of them because they're part of my volunteer group. And I said, seeing you as an educated Filipino gives me hope. And I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. I told that kid, I said, I want you to succeed. When you graduate, I want you to get a job and make sure you invest your money. I told him because I said, you are the future and the hope of your family.
The only hope is not to, create subsidies and create handouts and stuff like that. The only hope I see is to invest in this mindset. It's really about mindset. If you want to become, the difference, I swear to God, I think the biggest difference between the rich and the poor is a mindset.
Yeah.
And if you want to change that, you need to, yes, education is part of it, but educating them to have the right mindset, to be financially savvy, to understand and see the systems and the government and policies the way they are, to be able to play this game and navigate that. That's a mindset.
Yeah. I think the hardest part about Philippines is that, I don't know if you know the statistics on this one. This was interesting. There was a result that came out, a test they did for comprehension. Philippines came out dead last.
Oh, really?
In math, science, and English.
That's ironic because when you look at all these Filipinos overseas, especially in America, they do quite well.
Exactly. It's the educational system. It's broken. And I think unfortunately, I do believe politicians want to keep it broken.
Yes.
Because that's how they
maintain power.
Yes. So it starts with that comprehension. Do you know, like when I read my YouTube comments, it's sad to say this. There's quite a few, when you read it, you can't even understand what they're trying to say. They can't even form a proper sentence. Some can't even spell properly. It's so sad to see that. And that's the basic problem. So then you have to teach the mindset.
Right.
You can't even get them. You can't even get them to teach. You know how many Filipinos tell me I don't even understand math. Math is the most important subject you need to learn.
Right.
Math, it's basic.
100%, yeah.
And they can't even do math. And they have this mindset, mahina ako sa math. Excuse me, that's Tagalog. I'm bad in math. They even
It's like
in any
that
country.
nosebleed comment.
Yeah,
right?
it's a nosebleed comment. Oh, I can't understand English. I'll nosebleed. Right? It's the same with math. But in reality, a lot of Filipinos should be good in math. And the ones that are able to embrace that, they actually do well. We have a lot of great programmers. Philippines has one of the best programmers. You know why? That means that's high logic. To be able to be a programmer, you have to have high logic because you have to be able to translate one language to another. To do that requires super high logic.
Well, you think about the people in the healthcare industry in the U.S. Or there are a lot of engineers and healthcare guys, a lot from the Philippines. In fact, I just talked to Laki, my last guest. Filipinos in America are one of the highest paid Asian ethnicity, like the third, I think, and it's largely due to the healthcare industry. And he mentioned it too. He says the politicians here don't want to have an educated society because look at how they win in politics.
Yeah, keeping them dumb, keeping them ignorant. Because when they're ignorant, they need the politician. Because now it's a padrino system. It's like a mafia. You come to me, I give you money, and I protect you. I'll take care of you because you're powerless.
Yeah.
You don't have anything that you can do to get you out of that problem. So I will be there to help you.
Yeah.
And I will remind you that I can help you, that you can't help yourself. And that's where the problem lies. Now, having said that, I have a question that I want to ask you.
Sure.
So what is that mindset that they should have? So what is the current mindset that the poor have, the underprivileged, the ones that are having a hard time with life, and then the ones that have, from the have-nots to the have? What is the mindsets of the have-not, and what is the have, and how do you change?
I think the poor is just so focused on their next paycheck and their next meal that they're not really thinking much further ahead. And I think if anybody was put in those conditions, I think anybody would react the same way. So I'm not knocking them, but at what point do you start investing more for the future and thinking about like for example, if I were to say, let's say my maids and drivers, they get paid in cash. If I were to say to them, hey, if I take a small percentage of your salary and put it into a contribution where we invest it, and then I'll contribute some of that too. I'll contribute half of that. And it'll go into your retirement plan, or it'll go into your health care, your medical insurance. Do you think they would do it?
No.
That's the mindset I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How do you change that?
That is okay. So I this is so good. Okay, so how do you change it? So now I'm thinking this, that it's Maslow's law. No, not Maslow. Sorry, it's the hierarchy of needs. I forget who said the hierarchy of needs. Shelter, basic, security, food. Those are the basics. Once you're able to secure that, then you get to the next level of needs. Then after that, then it keeps going higher in the needs, where then it becomes about enlightenment and improving yourself.
Yeah, sure.
But you first have to deal with the very first one: basic healthcare, health, security, shelter, all of that.
Right.
So we have to first solve the problem of shelter,
Right.
security.
Right.
So
Agreed.
as a government, and actually funny, when I was talking to the informal settlers in the area, I said to them, I'm not going to give you a handout, which was such an unpopular thing to say.
Yeah.
So don't expect to come to me and get a handout. I was so real with them. I said, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to institutionalize change that I hope that I'll have enough power to be able to change where you live, improve your shelter, your security, and your basic the job to have a basic income, that now you can elevate your life to something better.
Right.
That's what I hope to do.
Right.
That's how you get them out of the thing. You got to give them that. So the government, that's where the government has to step in to be able to say, hey, let me give you proper shelter.
Right.
Not give in a way, let's just give it. Just
Right.
let's figure out a way for you to work to get to that.
you into it and make it
It livable, that
Right.
you're not thinking about and then the next paycheck.
Right.
Then let's talk about how to help you grow
Right.
your money.
I agree with you. How do you get the government to do that?
You got to get into government. Which
So
is,
you mentioned you're going to be running.
yeah.
When are you going to be running?
This elections, I actually filed my candidacy. I didn't announce it officially.
Can we announce it here?
We can. I did an announcement. I mean, I did an informal announcement where I mentioned it in another podcast, another political podcast. And I'm actually now about to start going around talking to people. But I can't campaign yet because it's not campaign period.
Okay.
So, but I can tell people I'm running.
Okay.
I'm not telling people to vote for me. So, yes, I'm running. And the reason I'm running is because as a vlogger, talking about politics, there's so many things I want to change in the government. You can't keep complaining about the problem.
Yes.
John, you said that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
You got to be part of the solution.
Right.
And I keep telling people, you should run. And then
Yeah.
it turns out, wait a minute, Chris, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You tell people to run, you should run.
Exactly.
So I said, let's do it. Although honestly, I keep saying this. I'm not doing it. I'm not begging for votes. Because honestly, going into government is not easy. It is a big sacrifice.
Right.
Unless you're doing it for the money.
Right.
Then it's not a sacrifice.
Then it's profitable if you're doing it for the money.
But I'm not doing it for the money.
Right.
I love my privacy.
Yeah.
No amount of money can can exchange for that privacy and security I have and that idea that I can leave anytime I want. But I'm doing it because I'm putting my money where my mouth is and telling the people, okay, I'm telling you to do it. I'm going to show you how it's done and if it's possible. Because is it possible for a private citizen to be part of the political system? Is it possible? Because it's gatekept by the dynasties who've been in power for 3 or 4 decades.
Right.
So let's see if it's possible. So if I can do it, I want to inspire people to see that they can do it and be part of the solution.
So let's say you win. What are you going to do?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I keep my vlog going so that people will know what's happening in the government. And every time we pass a budget, I'm going to actually show the budget and tell people, this is how much we spent, this is how much savings, this is how much money our city government has. Did you know this? Like, for example, when Vico saw the one in Pasig, the first thing he did was say, hey, guess what? There's a surplus of 2 billion pesos a year. Surplus. We never knew this. Let's give it. Let's now give each student an allowance so that they stay in school. If you go to school, I'll give you an allowance.
Nice.
You need healthcare? It's free.
Yes.
So he started doing that. So let's figure out, because I know Mandaluyong's rich.
Right.
How rich? We have Mega Mall, Shangri-La, Podium. We have BPOs. We have a lot of big businesses in Mandaluyong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in Mandaluyong. Let's now use it properly. I'm not saying that the current government's not using it properly. I'm saying that because they've been there for three decades, that they're stagnant and they're not thinking of new ideas to improve. That's all it is. I love that. I think the mayor there's doing a good job. That family is doing a decent job. I don't have any issues. But I think it's just because they've been doing it for so long, they're stagnant and they're not doing anything to change. Because they're just like, oh, okay naman, everything's working. Let's just keep it that way. You need new blood. You always need new blood in anything. And that's all I'm saying. Let's put new blood there.
Right.
So that's the idea. Let's put new blood. You can elect everyone else. I'm just a counselor. I'm 1 out of 12.
If you could change one thing and one thing only, what would it be?
The first thing I want to do is encourage businesses in Mandaluyong to hire people from the city.
Okay.
That way, and if they do that, if I can make a law, a legislation, an ordinance to give them initiative to do it, I would. Where if you have a business in Mandaluyong and you hire, let's say 50% from Mandaluyong, that you get a tax break of a certain amount. That's probably one of the first things I want to do. And therefore, if you're from Mandaluyong, you don't have to travel to another city to get a job because you can get one in the city.
Nice.
That's the first thing. I want to create a circular economy.
Right.
I don't know if a counselor has the ability to do that, but let's try.
Well, we need that in multiple places, right?
Yeah. So that's one thing I want to do.
Nice.
Of many things.
Yeah.
One thing I really want to do is I really want to give the informal settlers proper housing. That was so sad seeing what I saw.
That's
wow. It is insane.
It's crazy. It was such a culture shock for me just driving around and like seeing the squatters and areas and stuff like that. And it's just right beside you, right besides all this, and it's right besides these major corporate buildings, and it's just crazy. And then the urban planning behind it, it's almost inhumane to live in those conditions, right?
Isn't it interesting in BGC alone? The demarcation between the rich and the poor is literally one street.
It's crazy.
You cross that street. Wow, it's night and day. It's night and day, and that's not just in the Philippines. It's everywhere, all over the world.
But it's much more apparent here.
It's much more apparent, yeah. Because I mean, look in Japan. Wow, I love Japan.
Yeah.
Look at everyone has a house there.
Yeah.
The small spaces they can make it into a beautiful home.
Yeah.
They can do that here.
Yes.
I want to do that here.
Yes.
I've always had that dream of. I see all these houses in the Philippines that looks really bad. These small properties. I'm like, can you imagine if they turn into a Japanese 2-story thin house, but it's beautiful.
Right.
It's aesthetically pleasing, and you live there and you're proud of it. Why don't we do that? I want to do that.
People knock me for being so negative about the Philippines real estate, but in truth, I believe there are so much opportunities in Philippines real estate.
Yeah.
I wish those opportunities were there for me as a foreigner. They're not. Maybe there will be in the future, but I feel like there's so many opportunities to develop properties, develop land, develop the cities, like you said, in an appropriate way. But it's so risky. There's so many unknowns and so many like red tape.
Yeah, it's discouraging, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of wanting to do it, you're like, screw it, I don't want to work for this.
Not
It's too
worth
much
the
trouble.
risk. It's you're holding. If you're a well connected family, you're a
Yeah.
developer. You can push through those.
Right.
Those are your advantages. But it doesn't empower an investor like me.
Yeah. So that's interesting you mentioned that, because before I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And I'm not an entrepreneur now. I don't have any businesses. I'm just a vlogger. I have nothing.
Yeah.
I am literally a nomad. And I've been offered businesses over the last 5 years since I stopped over the last 10 years since I stopped my business. Oh, here, would you want to invest? I was offered to invest in a shrimp farm, car dealership. The Chinese car makers were coming. I was offered, hey, would you want to be the dealer in the Philippines? Blah, blah, blah. A group of us. I looked at the investments. You know what I kept thinking to myself? God, the red tape. Oh, God, I have to deal with government. Screw it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I said, so if we open this, I got to deal with the mayor, getting building permit, sanitary permit, blah, 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 all these permits that are going to take forever. And then they're going to give me a hard time to get the permit. And they're going to find so many loopholes to give me a hard time, so that by the time I'm done doing it, I am so exhausted, I don't want to do business. No. Why? Because I can make more money without the headache somewhere else.
Right.
And I don't want to say where.
Right.
Well, in crypto, in Bitcoin,
Yeah.
I make more money. I get passive income, say 5% off my Bitcoin,
Right.
doing nothing. Then putting it in an investment where, how long is the ROI? 10 years?
Yeah.
Are you nuts?
Right.
Forget that.
Do that
With
in a
all the
year, yeah.
risk?
Yeah.
Oh, Chris, this was 5 years. 5 years, but with the risk.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, you're my partner. Are you really going to give me my share? Are you? How do I
Yeah.
even know you're declaring the right amount?
Exactly.
How do I even know you're operating properly?
Right,
How do I
exactly.
know you're not skimming? I've known so many businesses that they skim off the top and then they sue each other. I was like, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't done business since 2015. And that's it for me. I have literally, I just exited of the Philippine economy to a certain extent.
That sounds nice. I should probably consider doing that.
But then again, as I say that, John, honestly, like you being here, us talking about it, some of the ideas I have that I wanted to implement, that I'm like, maybe I still want to do that. Maybe, I don't know. It's just suddenly sparking that entrepreneurship fire that maybe I want to do something for my country again. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, you are doing something for your country. I believe so. And think that's why I have you here. And I think this is, we may not see the effects of it now, but I think in the future, this is going to pay dividends. I think it's going to bring a lot of awareness, and I think it's much more effective, I think, than just to do like a mom and pop business, or to, I think something like this, what you're doing is definitely going to wake people up.
Thank you. And you know what the thing is about vlogs? Like, for example, for me, like I realized that before I was a life coach. I still am a life coach, but I don't practice life coaching anymore. But I realized there was a shift that happened in me. When I started life coaching, I wanted to help people. But that was a one-on-one help.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, this is going to take too much time to try to help people.
Right.
That's when I shifted and I turned to vlogging, because I realized if I can reach 100 people and 10 of them are affected by what I said, then now I've affected 10 people and I've helped 10 people. Versus if I do it one at a time to get to 10 people, I might need a month to do that. This one video. And that's why I started doing it. And I'm seeing that effect. I am seeing people change. I'm seeing people become more critical thinkers. People forgot to think critically. Not forget, maybe they never knew how. Because our whole life, information was not democratized. It was curated. Our whole life until at about 2015, starting the start of social media, when it started to become democratized. And when it became democratized, people did not have the tools to be able to deal with all that information. And that's where the problem lay.
Misinformation.
Exactly, because you don't know how to sift through the information, because we were never taught how to do it.
Yeah.
Now we know how. Well, at least we're hearing it. Oh, this is how we do it. Informal education and how to sift through information. But nonetheless, education. Hopefully there is going to be school courses on how to sift through disinformation and propaganda, and hopefully we have courses in critical thinking. But so far, the informal education on how to sift through it is good, and with people like that do vlogs that talk about different topics and be able to inform people will help. And that's where the space I'm at.
I believe you. Yeah, I believe it. And I do. I hope you do win when you become mayor. Is it mayor?
No, not mayor, counselor.
Counselor.
No, not
Okay.
mayor. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
counselor. We're gonna start with just the basic, the very
Okay.
first step to learn about the government and find
Yeah.
out how we can change. And if things go well, and let's see, we're able to help people. If we help people, then let's progress with the help.
Right.
If we can help.
Right.
If we're not productive and we're not helping, if I don't think I'm able to be a productive member of the government to help, then I'm getting myself out.
Right.
So that's, yeah.
Well, I'm here to support you. So we would love, like, I feel like we can go on
and
day.
on, I know.
So there's, I definitely have to have you on because I have like 3 pages of
Oh,
questions.
wow. Look at that.
I haven't even gotten to a fraction of it. So,
Oh, wow.
but we are running out of time. But can I get you on another podcast?
Absolutely, man.
Pretty soon. I would love to dive deeper into some of these topics.
Yeah, I love our conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It's some of it's a deep dive, and some topics are literally one whole episode right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this is a great podcast. Love to have you come back on. And if you guys like this content, please consider subscribing. And let us know what you think. Do you agree with what Chris has talked about? Do you believe in crypto? Do you think it's a scam? Let us know what you think in the comments below.